Before I dive in, I would love to hear from you guys, whether you want to throw it in the chat or you want to just pop on and speak. Let me know what about social media you're really hoping to get out of this. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy and the tools, but if there's something specific you're dying to know, or if it's like, I don't know what to post, or I don't know how to manage the content calendar, that'll help me guide where to dive in a little bit deeper. So I'd love to hear from you guys, like I said, in the chat, or just pop on and let me know real quick. Let's see, okay, chat, okay. Well, content, okay, what to post, right? A process to use it to help our brand. Awesome, okay. All right, so we'll do a little bit of both, guys. So like Lisa said, my name is Amy. I am part of your marketing team here at LPT Realty. I've started my career in the mortgage industry, and that morphed into working with real estate agents and real estate offices. And I ended up getting my license to better serve the agents that I worked with, and then found my way onto the real estate side of things and have been here ever since. Currently, I'm called the Corporate Marketing System Specialist here. I'm in charge of some of the digital advertising that we do for the luxury programs, as well as handling some of our internal communications like the newsletter. So you'll see me a bit around. First things first, let's talk about the importance of social media and why real estate agents really need to get involved. Number one, social media is one of the biggest new kind of avenues for marketing and advertising yourself. It lends itself for a very casual face-to-face interaction without that pressure of actually having to be face-to-face. If we look at some of our most popular platforms, we're looking, I'm going to focus on the 4 that are listed here: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Yes, there's LinkedIn. Yes, there's X, or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. There's also things like Snapchat and so forth. But these are kind of my 4 pillars that really, I feel, form the strongest foundation for any sort of social media strategy. Of course, the more platforms you use is completely up to you. I'm not saying don't use those platforms. I'm just going to focus on these because they're the most effective, in my opinion. Some of these stats here, I will point out just a few things that I thought were very interesting you might want to keep an eye on. The number one thing that I thought was really fascinating, which wasn't on the statistics the year prior, was the fact that Instagram users are saying that that's where they find the most engaging brand content, as well as Gen Z specifically is taught that they prefer to have Instagram act as their customer service portal. So instead of giving a call on that 1-800 number to the company that you just bought an item from and you're having an issue, they're going to slide into the DMs of that company instead and expect to have a conversation with the customer service rep right there on social media. The reason I point this out is because this is not just a Gen Z phenomenon. This has become very popular, especially in the real estate space, where conversations are starting online in DMs on social media before we are getting on the phone or setting an appointment to meet face to face. So don't neglect your DMs. That's the purpose of that tidbit there. And then, of course, YouTube being the second largest search engine and owned by Google, anytime somebody types a query into the search bar on Google, if there is a video that YouTube hosts that is relevant to that content, Google is going to start showing going to show those videos in the search results. I'm sure you've seen it. So consider this for some of those more common questions you get, like a how-to, or also very common for neighborhood tours. People develop a sense of an area. We'll go watch videos about that part of town. Those do really, really well on YouTube. So keep that in mind when you're building out your content. The reason I say social media is important for real estate agents is a combination of things. But number one, it's the idea that it's 24/7 exposure. You guys have busy lives. You are prospecting. You are meeting with customers for consultations. You're showing property. You're attending inspections. You're sitting at the closing table. All of these things are not conducive to also prospecting at that time. So your social media content can really serve as a 24/7 prospecting engine for you, putting your thoughts, your ideas, most importantly, your expertise out there on display for everybody. And the reason that's really important, especially now, is we have an even larger responsibility to build trust and credibility with these potential customers before meeting with them, because our rules have changed. We used to, be able to have, real casual interactions before we're setting out and showing property with somebody. But now we have to sit down and we actually have to discuss, hey, this is how much my services are going to cost you. And you may potentially not be able to get that covered from the seller in our contract. So you're going to have to figure out another way to do this. That's a really difficult conversation to have with a total stranger. But if they have been checking you out online and they've been watching your content or watching your videos or reading your content, getting a sense for who you are and your personality and your potential, specialties or your demonstration of expertise, that's going to help them make that conversation much more smooth on your, much smoother for you, as also it's putting them at ease that, yeah, I'm willing to pay this because I see that I can trust you with this potentially largest financial transaction of my life. The other thing that's really good about this is that when they do reach out to you, when they do slide into your DMs, that's a vetted lead. They've already gotten to know you, right? They've already checked you out a bit. It's not a cold call. They've seen your face, they've read your profile, they know who you work for, and they've probably perused your website if you have links to it in your content. So it's a really great way to break that barrier of a totally cold lead, because I don't know about you, but raise your hand if you would prefer a warm lead over a cold lead. I would. I'll take a warm lead over a cold lead. Yeah, it's like I want a warm plate over a cold plate, right? And then if you do step up to the point where you're getting ready to do put some money behind your content and potentially do some advertising or lead generation, click, pay-per-click advertising, you're going to find the best prices available for advertising in general is going to be those sorts of campaigns, which are run on the backs of these platforms. Thankfully, we do a lot of this in-house for you through LPT's marketing. So we've got a lot of one-click, one-touch sort of programs and listing power tools where you can advertise for different things. So definitely, if we're not going to talk about advertising in detail here, so if it is something you're looking to get into, definitely try using some of our plug-and-play one-click options that we have in the marketing circles on Connect. But when you're ready to step up to the bigger leagues, this is definitely the most cost-effective way to do it. And then my last and favorite part is you could be socializing and networking in pajamas. You've had a long day. You've shown a ton of property. It was hot. You might have got rained on. Your shoes got muddy. No one needs to know that you are snuggled up on the couch with your favorite hot beverage and you are, your hair's a mess, or, you've got a grungy old t-shirt on, right? You can be having these intelligent conversations online through your content, or texting in your DMs or interacting in comment sections, and no one needs to know what you look like or what you've been through for that day. So I find this is very conducive to our type of lifestyle as the constant on the go, perpetually exhausted realtor. So it's a lot less time consuming when you're not having to get dressed and get to a location, right? So let's talk crafting your strategy. You guys are going to want to think about your social media like you do any other prospecting. You want it to be, you want to have a strategy, you want to be able to replicate that, and you want to be able to be consistent. So the best ways to do that are going to be, number one, by putting time on your calendar blocked out for social media. So you'll see here on this slide, I've got next to the little calendar icon, it's three items. We've got time for your curation, creation, and engagement. So curation is simply that. You are just curating the ideas or the concepts that you want to talk about or that you want to create content about. This could be, pulling aside that article clipping from the newspaper this morning that was about, the real estate market. It could be saving the link to the Inman article about us winning the most innovative brokerage award. It could be going through the MLS and highlighting a few properties that you would like to discuss, or property features that you want to discuss in your content. Whatever it is, it's that time where you're just collecting your ideas. This is something that you probably are doing all the time, essentially, as you go throughout your day. But just understand that you want to be intentional, where you are putting all of those ideas in one place, or you're writing them down in a notebook, in a notes app, you're saving links to a Pinterest board, whatever it may be. Just you have that general place where you're putting all of your ideas so that you can just pull from that pool when it's time to get into the creation side of things. And that's going to be the time that you are taking to write the posts, writing the captions, creating the graphics, or gathering the photography. It could be the time that you're taking to shoot the video or to edit the video. That's all going to be something that you want to make sure you have time blocked on your calendar, because a lot of times it's the thing that gets put to the last minute. And if that happens, you're more likely to let it drop and not finish. And then that means that post doesn't get posted. And what we are trying to do is make sure that you are consistent with your posting. So the last one on there, engagement, that's essentially that's kind of fun time. That's time you're going to be scrolling through the social feeds and interacting with other people's posts, other people's comments on other posts, and interacting with any of the comment or engagement that's happening on your page, on your profile, and in your posts, as well as in your DMs. You never want to leave comments on your content unanswered or unacknowledged. It's essentially like walking into a room, getting on your soapbox, telling everybody your opinion, and then just standing there while they all try to talk to you and you're just looking off into the distance. It's a very odd sense of they just came in, dropped the mic, and left the room. We don't want that. We want to start conversations, because ultimately we want them to ask you to set up a meeting to help them buy or sell. So you've got to engage with them. If we want to talk about how often, we're going to kind of go with some benchmark baseline getting started timeframes. So at the very least, you want to be using one platform to start. So whichever platform you are most comfortable with, my suggestion and recommendation is going to always be to start with that platform. There's no need to make this harder than it already is. Don't try to learn a new platform and features before you are comfortable with actually having a strategy behind your content. So, like I said, one platform to start, and you're going to try and look for 3 to 4 posts per week. I love the idea of using stories daily to get you in that habit of daily posting without all of the the pressure that comes from a static post that's going to live in perpetuity on your feed. Stories are a really great way to break into the habit of posting daily with low commitment and very little effort in execution. You're not necessarily editing. You're not creating multiple clips or trying to, come up with this huge narrative. It's just a very short clip or a static image with a little text, maybe a sticker or two. If you're not familiar with those, just put in the chat and I can go over that in a minute. But great way to get you started on how to posting daily is to start with your stories. And then you're just going to look at the back end analytics and you're going to see how things are doing, which posts perform better, which types of posts or time of day or day of the week gets more engagement, and you'll start to adjust to move things more into the direction to align with what your audience wants to see. From that standpoint, the times that most people are going to be the most active online are going to be early mornings, lunch hours, weeknights, and weekend mornings. We have noticed that weekends during the afternoon and evening, that seems to be the precious time that people are focused on family, friends, and all sorts of other extracurricular activities. And they tend not to look at their social media at those times. So the advice is don't post when nobody's there. Try to save your posts or schedule your posts for these times when there's a larger audience already present and engaging with the content on the platforms as it is. You'll get more exposure that way. And I do reference here a couple of third-party softwares like Hootsuite, Buffer, or Later. These are companies that can help you schedule your content for, posting ahead of time and just scheduling it to post. One thing I'll say about this is, again, this is my personal opinion, although I have seen it replicated online. I don't have any stone cold hard facts to support it, but my personal intuition has been that whenever I have used one of these third-party softwares, my posts don't get as much engagement. I believe that these platforms and these social networks will throttle content that is not posted directly via their native scheduling program or app. So in that regard, if it's something that, maybe it's just a happy 4th of July post, it's not something that you're expecting to get a lot of engagement on or, to start to drive conversions, maybe that's a great option for putting those sorts of posts on autopilot in a scheduler, but keep the ones that are going to be the conversation starters or the business drivers or the lead generators, keep those scheduled natively through the app. You can still schedule ahead of time using, at least I know in Meta, and I know YouTube does it. I believe TikTok can do it as well, but they all allow you to create content inside their app and schedule it to post at a later date. So that's always going to be what I consider your best option if you are going to use one of those services. So I'm going to jump around a little bit here because I want to talk about how we're going to set up your content calendar and what's going to be on it. But I normally put this slide towards the end. I'm going to start a little bit. I'm going to just go out of order here. So this is an example of what a content calendar could look like. Obviously, this is for demonstration purposes. So I just grabbed an image of a calendar here and laid out some of the post captions and content outlines for you to see how I would do this. But what I want you to start to think about is looking at your calendar exactly like it's listed here and thinking about how you could map your content out weekly, monthly, or even a year ahead of time. And I'm going to open it up here to you guys in the comments. Again, feel free to just put your mic on and shout answers at me. Is there anything that right now? We are in July. We just passed July 4th. Is there anything coming up between now and the end of the year, December 31st, that hands down, you're going to want to make a post or a few posts in regards to? Does anybody have any ideas of things that they know for sure they want to talk about or put out to their audience before the end of the year? Let me see I want to see how you guys are thinking here. What do we got?
The beginning of school.
That's a great one. Yes, school year. I think I just saw somebody post in one of the Facebook groups. We've got like 6 weeks or something before school starts up again here or something crazy like that. I'm not prepared. You've got 3. Oh, goodness. Where are you?
Las Vegas, mid-August.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're trying to do a year-round school calendar here. I would not mind it at all. I think it'd be great. But that's perfect. Starting schools, holidays, and birthdays. Yes, absolutely. So you already know that there's going to be a couple holidays, at least, depending on what you celebrate, before the year is up. So you could very easily start planning that content today if you wanted to, especially because it's not necessarily, the messaging doesn't really change from year to year unless we've, encountered some sort of, potential, maybe if there's been some sort of weather disruption to a holiday or, some sort of economic something or other that kind of changes how we can celebrate. We typically know these things come every time, the same time every year, and we typically have about the same messaging. So something like starting school, I don't know if this happens in Vegas, Kelly, but by me here in Florida, we do a tax-free week that goes ahead of school starting. So you can buy school supplies tax-free. This is a great time to remind your audience about that. Hey, school's coming up. We know that everybody's looking to save a bit on, all those school supplies. Here's a great list or here's where to find the list for the children based on their school and their grade and their classroom, right? Like, where do I get the list of supplies for the teacher I know we're going to have? That's typically something offered by our school board. So maybe you have something like that in your area. Holidays, of course, yes, we all know those. And then some other things like, tax deadlines, end of year. These are things you want to start thinking about, these things that come back every year, and plan ahead for them. Get that content written or recorded, or at least outlined when you have the free time now, versus, oh my God, I need to post this tomorrow because the homestead exemption is tomorrow and I have not reminded anybody about this. So yeah, the property tax bill, that's a big one. We do homestead exemption here, and I love that one. I always love to tie that back to if you make a post about something like this that is, hey, homestead exemption is coming up, or your tax deadlines are coming up, and you have the ability to tie that in to existing customers or recently closed customers as a touch point. Now you have a conversation starter to get on the phone with your customer who closed earlier this year and say, hey, Jenny, I know I'm reaching out. How are you been? I know it's been a couple months. Hey, I know homestead exemption deadline is coming up. And since you bought this year, if that's your primary residence, you might need a copy of your paperwork to file if you haven't already. Do you need a copy of any of your documents, or can I help you, with anything? And now I just gave you a reason to reach out to somebody that you might not have really felt comfortable reaching out because it's been a little bit, but you just made that post. So the next day, there's no reason when you call them, you say, I'm sure you saw my social media post. Just like Robert said, I'm sure you saw me on Sunday Night Football, right? They might not have seen the post, but now they're going to start thinking about, oh, well, maybe I should follow her if I'm not already, right? So I love that you can schedule these things ahead of time, get planning on them, and also start using them as touch points outside of social. So with that being said, you're going to, when this class is over and you guys are done for the day, because I'm not going to take, don't work while you're in between, because it's going to be a little bit more than you can squeeze in between your classes today. But after class today, tonight, tomorrow, the next few days, just take a pad and paper and start writing a list of these sorts of things that you're always going to want us to talk about. And you can start breaking them up by month, or you can do it by quarter, by season, whatever it is. Just start making that list. And then that's going to be like your kind of your Bible to go to, saying, before you start your content calendar for the month, oh, let me just check this list. Do I have anything that's supposed to go on there for this month? And then you can fill it in with all the additional content, which we are going to get to right now. So what the heck are you going to post about? Well, believe it or not, there's so much that you can post. There's a never-ending supply of content when it comes to real estate, because not only can we talk about the process, the transaction, what we do as realtors, but we can talk about the product. We can talk about the features. We can talk about, all the different aspects of the different types of properties and what sort of extra, sometimes you're going to buy a house with a septic tank. You're going to want to schedule a septic inspection. What are they going to look for? All this, there's so many ways to educate the consumer on what we do and the multitude of things that we have to know and understand. Because again, I always come back to this phrase that I absolutely hate to hear, is that a real estate agent just opens a door and collects a check. We all know that is the farthest thing from the truth. But if we are not out there demonstrating what we do and the expertise that we have and the responsibility that we shoulder with keeping up to date on all of these changes in our industry, in our neighborhoods, in our tax codes, they're never going to know. It's all of that unseen, labor that we do. So I love that agents have an opportunity to show that through their content. So what sort of things are you going to post? Well, number one, we have, it's a very interesting industry we're in that we sell a product with an inventory that we do not control. I can't say I want to sell a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a pool, with a fenced yard and a front porch. I can say that, but I don't have that unless I've happened to find a listing, a seller who has a house that fits that and wants to list it. So you're always going to be able to talk about something new because your listings are always going to be something new. We can't really just pick and choose them like we could saying, I have 15 of this widget in blue and 13 in pink, right? It's a little bit of a different industry. So we need to talk about that product because every product is different. So you're going to post when you have a property coming on the market. If your MLS does coming soon, you're going to want to make sure that you've put a coming soon post. You want to get the buzz started. I'll use the example that when the Apple Watch launched, you definitely didn't hear about it the day it launched. You heard about it for weeks and months ahead of the launch to build that buzz and to build that curiosity so that the day that it launched, there was a line outside of every Apple store 3 blocks long, right? That could be your listing if you incorporate a coming soon, just listed, and an open house series of posts. So consider that series being something you're going to want to do with all of your properties. So that's at least 3 posts per property right there. And like I said, open houses as well. And we talked about the special features and upgrades. So you may want to talk about, this is a quartz countertop here. I'm not necessarily going to be hard selling this listing. I'm going to be talking to you about the different types of countertops, specifically focusing on how my beautiful listing has these quartz countertops, which are more durable, don't require annual sealing, don't stain in the same way marble might, but has that similar look. If you really love that crisp white marble look, you can kind of get there with quartz. Like, these are all things that maybe the customer doesn't understand about the importance of choosing the proper countertop. So you're educating them while standing in your beautiful listing. Oh, by the way, if you love this kitchen, you can buy it. Schedule a showing, right? So educating them about the importance of choosing a countertop to fit your lifestyle while being in a kitchen with said countertop that fits potentially their lifestyle. It's that gentle reminder that I'm in real estate and I sell homes, but right now I'm not here to sell you necessarily. Subconsciously, you're being sold to, but we're not forcing it. So there's a really great way to use your content to subtly, gently remind them that you are the expert, that you have the great listing, that you are the one to call without having to necessarily say it. I love to talk about staging and showings, how to prep a house for staging, or the difference between a staged home and a non-staged home. Before and afters do really well. Same thing as how to prepare your house for a showing or what to look for when you're at a showing. Because I think that's when we don't hear a lot about is what should buyers be doing during showings? Should I be turning things on and opening doors and checking, kicking the tires, so to speak? Or is that a no-no? Why don't you teach them? This is going to be the kind of content that educates them. Obviously, you see at the top there, you want it to educate, entertain, or engage in some way. So you're always looking when you're making content, like, does it do any of these 3 touch points here? Next sort of pillar is going to be your market area, because let's face it, you sell the lifestyle of the market you're in, right? It's your responsibility to know the sorts of things that a homeowner or a resident in that area would do or enjoy. So talk about it. Where I'm living, we have a lot of new construction. So our neighborhoods, a lot of neighborhoods are fairly new. So you go on Google and you're not really going to necessarily find too much about some of these brand new neighborhoods. This is where the realtors really shine in giving a really educated look at what to expect. Or, I've seen agents do really great tours of brand new community developments, stopping by the amenities to show off, hey, this is the pool, this is the clubhouse, or simply the fact of, hey, they just released a new phase of lots here. So if you're looking to get into this neighborhood, you're going to have to act fast. Reach out, let me know. Let's get an appointment scheduled so you can pick out the lot that you want before it's gone. That subtle call to action while you're educating them is a lot more approachable for the general public than a hard, we've got lots, they're selling out, call me today. That sort of, we have, what is it, like the car lot salesman sort of spiel, right? You're going to talk about the things that you can do and see, taste, smell, all the things that happen in your neck of the woods. Because especially if you have a lot of people who are potential second home buyers or tourists, if you're in a touristy area where you get a lot of visitors from out of town, your content could serve as a tourist, a tourist information center for what's there to do in this area. And then by way of attracting, out of towners to your content, now they're also, if they're ever looking to buy, well, you're of course the shoe-in. There's a couple agents who do this really well in some of the larger markets. I'm sure Kelly out in Vegas, that's one of them where I know there's a lot of people, a lot of agents that they talk about, you'll see video titles or 5 reasons not to move to Vegas. People love clicking on stuff that's like negative or rage bait, but it's actually the 5 reasons to move aren't not to move are not bad things. They're actually highlights of why somebody would move there. So there's ways to incorporate that sort of rage bait or anti-answer, headlines or negative headlines to actually shift the focus onto why it is actually a great area. Local events, obviously, if there is a farmer's market that happens every week, or you have some sort of really great live music scene in your neck of the woods, consider doing a weekly post that highlights all the different places to find live music this weekend or who's playing. People love to know what's going on in their town, even if they are not showing up to those things, because they're telling other people, oh yeah, so-and-so just played at this restaurant last week, when in casual conversation, oh yeah, I saw that. I saw they're going to be at this place this week. Maybe we should go together. So it's this idea that even if you think your content isn't being seen or it's necessarily getting engaged, people are making a mental note of, oh, this person is always routinely telling me what to do on what's happening around town. Maybe you put it out Thursday night or Friday morning ahead of the weekend, whatever it may be. You're building consistency. Just keep going, because people will start to show up looking for it once they have gotten accustomed to the idea that, Taryn's every Friday, Taryn's telling us where the hot spots are for live comedy or whatever it may be. So moving on to industry expertise, you guys are so lucky to be here at LPT because we have all of these publications that already position you as the expert right on the cover, but they also outline all the expertise that you need to have. And I know this always happens to me here with this blurring thing, but so consider that you have, and I'm not kidding you guys have 12 months worth of content minimum just from pulling what's in these publications that you should already have in your arsenal. So for instance, I love using here's the 9 critical questions. That's 9 posts right there. Each question is a post. Now you don't have to give away all the secret sauce, because just like we have the smaller door hangers and the jumbo door hangers, or we have the simplified, the short version of the 9 critical questions, or the short AMP, and then we have the larger publication. You could start with giving a tease about something that's in here and encourage them to reach out to you for give me a call or put your email, shoot me a DM, put your email in the comments. They might not want to put their email in the public forum, but comment book put book in the comments if you would like me to mail you a hard copy of this incredible resource with your face right on the front. So it's going to arrive in their house and be on their coffee table, reminding them that you, again, are the expert. So, for instance, you've got the first question, or what is it? The personalized multifaceted marketing plan. I know you guys can't see it. Why is it important that an agent has a marketing plan and isn't just following the age-old 3 Ps? Put it in the MLS, put a sign in the yard, and pray it sells, right? There's a great way to educate a potential consumer why working with you means you're working with a true professional, somebody who's not going to just go by the old 3 Ps, because you have a full strategy. So you can tease all of your strategy through your content and leverage these materials for, you could do a series. You could do buyers, this month we're going to talk about buyers. So all of your posts, you're going to have a post each week about something that's in your buyers material or some of your buyers tips and tricks and things like that. So consider, if you've got nothing to post and you are darn confused and have nothing, pull these out and skim through them, and you will find more than you need. With that, market updates. If I could encourage you to do anything, it would be to do market updates, because the market is always changing and the public doesn't necessarily understand the headlines because they're often written as a national headline, right? And we know that real estate is so hyper local. So just because the market is tanking in Topeka does not mean the condos in Tampa aren't just completely going through the roof. So when you're doing market updates, it's very applicable to the people who live there. And if you are consistent with showing up every month or every quarter or whatever it may be, you will find, again, people will start to expect it, and they will reach out to you if they haven't seen it yet. They will remind you, hey, when is that market update coming out? One thing to note with market update, always when you're giving stats like, oh, the average price per square foot, or the average list to sale price ratio, these are numbers and statistics that us as industry professionals, we understand and we know what it means. The general public does not. So I encourage you that anytime you're speaking about the market and that sort of those sorts of terms, you make sure to break down what that means for the potential customer. So if you're speaking to buyers, you want to say, hey, so what does this mean for you as a buyer? Well, the fact that we only have 3 months inventory means it's probably going to be more of a seller's market, and they're going to have a lot more negotiating power. But hey, 2 months from now, when that starts to shift, you say, we've now got about 5-6 months of inventory on the market, which is a more balanced market. So buyers, that means that you have a little bit more bargaining power, and sellers are likely going to be a little bit more willing to negotiate because it's taking them a little bit longer to sell their house than it was 2 months ago. That is gold to an uneducated buyer or seller. And we have to remember to take our realtor hat off from time to time and think, what would a buyer want to know, or what would a seller want to know about this? Because we take it for granted that we have all of this incredible understanding and knowledge about what these terms and figures and statistics mean. But the normal day-to-day homeowner or potential homeowner has no clue. They don't understand any of it from the grand scheme of things. And that's why you, the expert, have the opportunity to show them exactly what that information means, again, while proving that you are the one to trust. I'm going to just skip around a little bit here, but like mistakes, mishaps, and mayhem, if you can talk about a time that things went absolutely foobar and you recovered, by all means, those are engaging stories to tell. Those can be very humorous sometimes. I know we love to tell a story about how I used to work with bank-owned homes, and we had squatters in our bank-owned homes, and it scared the bejesus out of our field agent. And, all these crazy stories that and things that you run into on a day-to-day basis, they can make for entertaining content. With the caveat, you obviously never want to talk about a time that you screwed up big time and didn't resolve it, or it didn't work out for the best in some way. Obviously, we're not advertising our screw-ups. We are advertising our human moments where we might make a mistake, but we show through our determination and our grit and our hard work that we pulled it off or we got it through, right? And never disparage another agent, regardless. Never disparage a client or another agent. You can tell crazy client stories by just saying, I had a buyer one time who, wanted to see every house under the sun, but then never showed up, or whatever it may be, right? You're not necessarily calling them out. So just be cautious of that. Industry news and current events. This is a big one. We have a lot of things that happen in our industry. We have a lot of current events that impact purchasing power. Interest rates are a big deal. So consider when you're scrolling through and you see headlines that relate to the real estate market, a lot of times they're probably misleading. This is your opportunity to grab that headline or grab that article and interpret it for the consumer. So they're seeing something that says, the 6% commission is gone because of the BBA that we saw last year. All these conversations about how agents' commission is being decimated and all this stuff. It's like, well, that's not exactly the true story. This is what they're trying to spin and get you all worked up about. But here is why this is actually kind of crazy, because the commission has always been negotiable. There you go, demonstrating your expertise. When it comes to news and current events that are political, I want to caution you to not take sides and try to avoid the polarizing topics within that category. I will say, if it's something that's relevant to a buyer or seller or an investor, then it may be valuable content, but make sure that you do it and come at it from a educational, neutral standpoint where I just want to talk about the facts here. So for instance, I always use this example of, it's been thrown around a bunch of times that they want to eliminate property tax here in Florida. Well, that would be a huge impact to our economy in a multitude of ways. So you could talk about that while saying, so what would this mean for you if you're looking to buy a home here in Florida? Well, if there's no property tax, on average, that might mean you're saving blah, 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 blah. But considering where all that money currently goes, they're going to have to pull it from somewhere else. So it may not be the savings that you're hoping it could be, AKA don't wait to get into the real estate market for this law to potentially ever come to fruition, right? That subtle way of saying, I'll talk to you about this, but I'm also going to show you why you're going to want to work with me here. And then the fun stuff, entertaining, engaging things like this or that, or guess the price of this home, or do you prefer, a tub shower combo or stand-up shower and separate tub? I saw one the other day, like, what do you think about having the wet room where that tub and the shower are all glassed in into one area? Brings to mind to me images of like Dexter, but that's okay. Doing trending sounds or trending dance moves, or if there's a trend, like what was the one where everybody says, I'm a realtor, so of course my phone is always on, has no battery left. There was that I'm a so-and-so, so of course I was the trend, right? You can reinterpret those for your content and your brand, but don't feel pressure to do dances or anything like that. It could be as simple as just putting a trending sound behind a static image of one of your new listings, and it'll still help the algorithm give you that extra juice. Behind the scenes stuff, I say this all the time, because we do so much that is unseen and unheard. This is an opportunity to showcase those sorts of things you do. So, a picture or a video clip of you typing, because you're going to talk about how every morning you run through the hot sheet and you look at everything that's been listed, everything that's went under contract, and everything that's sold. And this is how you have such an incredible understanding of what your market is doing, because every morning I spend 15 minutes on the hot sheet checking out what has changed. Just like a stockbroker opens up and they look at their market and they watch all their trends. You're doing the same thing, but I'm guaranteed nobody thinks realtors work this hard, right? Only we know how hard we work. So I love to see agents subtly pulling back that curtain and saying like, hey, no, this is a full-time job. I'm not just sitting back, on the beach, 90% of my time. So caveat, consider if you are posting a lot of I'm out doing this or I'm out doing that. I have a lot of friends in the industry who like to travel a lot. I sometimes can't tell that they're still actively in real estate because they are constantly posting about their personal travels versus what's going on in their real estate career. So be cautious that you are not presenting yourself as somebody who is a perpetual relaxer or a perpetual leisure enthusiast, because you are doing a job. You do have a career here that you are trying to promote in a business that you are trying to run. So don't forget to, show that there is a work-life balance there, of course. And bloopers are my favorite thing. We used to do a lot of video content and we would always save all of those blooper cuts where we flub the lines or something silly happens, and then clip those all together each month or each quarter for like a little like review of the fact that, I could not say the word precipitous or whatever it may be. Those sorts of things are entertaining. They're lighthearted. There's very little, there's very little sales aspect to it, of course, but you are reminding them that you're a real estate agent and you work hard at making content because they're seeing how many times you flubbed that word or how many times you couldn't get the door open trying to do the video tour, right? Whatever it may be, those are very entertaining and people tend to love them. So before I start to wrap it up with my last couple slides, let me know in the comments if there's any questions on anything you definitely want to hear me cover as I jump into the last little bits. I'm going to talk about tips for success, your 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you are going to be talking about the market or the listings or any of this stuff, but you're not going to be doing it in that salesy way. The salesy posts are going to be that 20% of the time. Just listed. Okay, that is a salesy post. I just listed this house. Here is the price. Click this link to learn more, or slide into my DMs to schedule a showing. Obviously, you're always going to want to use a call to action. You want to tell them what to do next. So it could be something like call, message, email, comment, like, share, whatever you want them to do. Make sure you put it in there to tell them what to do. But that's really only 20% of the time is your content going to be a hard sell, because the other 80% of the time you're talking about real estate, but you're talking about it in a way to educate them. The onus is on them to take the next step. Obviously, you're going to say, and if you would like more information or if you have some questions, I'd love to be a resource. Reach out. Here's how to contact me, right? It's a very gentle sell, and you're doing it while you're educating them. So it's that giving in order to receive, which is going to come up there next. That's where the engagement part comes in. You want to engage with the people that comment on your posts. You want to engage with the people that are posting commenting on other posts that are relevant. Like, you could be following all the different creators in your area, from restaurants and businesses to your local government and, your cities and towns, that sort of stuff. You want to engage in those conversations there, because it only further demonstrates your expertise to people who are reading through those comments. And the idea that you are giving them something of value in those Facebook groups or those next door groups where people are asking questions for who's got a great roofer, or who do I call to get this tree trimmed in my yard, or any of these sort of services that are very familiar to us as real estate agents. We have the ability to highlight our favorite vendors in those comment threads, and that's going to do a lot for those vendors, especially. And when they find out that you're hyping them up here and there, they're going to start, doing the same, or they're going to share that because they've been tagged in that post. So it's that idea that you gotta play the game in order to get something in return. I always say smile. People can hear when you're smiling in your voice. That's why we have a mirror that we look into when we do our cold calling, so that we don't sound like, Debbie Downer or whatever. It's just, there is scientific research that says people react more favorable to a smiling face than a non-smiling face. So when you are on camera, or you are, filming, whether you're filming a video or you're taking a photograph, consider a smile is going to make your content more engaging. As kind of silly as that sounds, it's actually true, and it's biologically built into our nervous system to be more conducive to somebody who has a friendly smile on their face. Don't be afraid to ask for the business. Of course, you're going to tell them what you want them to do. I love rankings, lists, and series. This is a great way to really put some concise, hard-hitting content. 5 things you need to do today if you want to buy a house next year, or top 10 improvements to make to your home before you put it on the market. People gobble that stuff up, and that is a really, really easy sort of way to put something out quick on the fly, especially if you involve ChatGPT or some other sort of AI service to help you come up with those ideas or flesh those ideas out a little bit further. You're going to use signature hashtags if you're a team and you've got a team name, or you yourself your brand has something catchy that you've created a hashtag. Make sure that's always on your content. Helps your content get found and helps you find your content that is created by others who tag you. Always use the location pins when talking about properties, because location, location, location. This is what we're selling, right? We are literally selling the dot on the map. So make sure that your profiles and your bios on your social media apps or your social media profiles tell me where you sell. Because I look up agents all the time for various reasons. I'm trying to get agents' information. I don't know how many times I'll go to their, especially Instagram profiles, and it won't tell me what market they sell. I have to look through the content. I see palm trees and I go, okay, that could be Florida, that could be Vegas. Tell me more. Make sure that you use those location hashtags and that your location is actually listed in your bio, so people know the market that you're looking, that people know when they're looking at that market that you are the person that sells in that market. And that's kind of where I come into like optimizing your profiles and bios. You can have AI or Chat GPT look at your profile and give you an analysis and feedback on how you could improve it for better SEO, or to better solidify that you are an agent that specializes in something, whether you do veterans or first-time home buyers, or maybe you're a senior relocation specialist, whatever it may be. You want to make sure that that is clear and present. I say change the medium. That just means if you posted a static photo today.
Taryn had her hand up there, Amy.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Sure, yes. What do we got, Taryn? Oh, no. Was an accident. All right, we're good. No problem. What I was going to say, yes. So if you did a static post today, consider doing a video tomorrow or a slideshow the next day, whatever it may be. Changing that up keeps the feed interesting and keeps you from feeling like you're getting stagnant in your content. And then honestly, the last two things here, like, don't take it personal and have fun. You are going to find that when you post online, it is going to open the floodgates to allow people who don't always have nice things to say, or just want to kind of come and like poop on your content and say like, oh, that house is listed too much, or, oh, I hate that restaurant. First of all, delete, block, whatever you need to do for those sorts of, you will be able to tell when somebody is just there to be a troll, and block them, delete them, hide the comments. There's no need to leave that sort of negativity on your page. However, a lot of times this is an opportunity for you to control the narrative and demonstrate why you are a leader in your industry. Because when we would see things like, oh, that price is that's way too much for that house. Okay, here's my opportunity to say, totally understand. What do you think it should be listed for? Or I'm curious, did you know that the 3 homes down the block have all sold for similar prices? And based on my market analysis, the average price per square foot in this subdivision has risen in the last 3 months from blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah. I mean, mic drop, you just told that troll where to go shove it because you have actual data. There's a quote that I love that we used to use in my old real estate team that I was part of. It is by an engineer. I think it's W.E. Dennings or Webbings, or I always get that wrong, but it is, without data, it's just an opinion. And that's what you're going to get, a lot of opinions. But if you have the data that can disprove or could, foster that opinion as being truth, by all means, showcase that expertise in those comments, and, don't necessarily delete it. Turn that conversation around, because anybody reading through that, you see that on any sort of social media post when somebody comes in with like a real, whatever, and then all the comments just rip them to threads, everybody below them. You know what? It makes the people want to read that. So people are going to look and see that and go, oh my God, how did she, oh, look at that. Look how they responded. Dang, they know their stuff, right? So consider blocking, but sometimes you might not want to block. And then my last but not least, my favorite tools for social media. Canva is what I use to create graphics or little video clips, things like that. I love ChatGPT. It will give me outlines of posts. It can write captions. You can tell it to add emojis, make it engaging, include a call to action. But I do love it for the strategy of let's break down the top 10 things that homeowners need to look for in an agent when they're going to sell their house, and help me break that down further into 10 separate posts. Video editing apps that I personally have used. I love InShot, CapCut. I did hear that CapCut is now, if you don't pay the premium, that they own your content. So just look into that before you start using anything and hoping that your content is, anything you create using the app is just yours. I think they can, if you're not paying, they can use it elsewhere. And then I absolutely love the native in-app creation tools. I love the Instagram Reels creation tool. I think that's the one that I'm probably the most comfortable with. So I will create things in there and download them, even if I'm not going to put them in Instagram itself. I love keeping track of what's going on in our industry using newsletters. So number one, our LPT newsletter is going to tell you all the things that are happening at LPT, but you might have, like we have the Florida Realtors, or you have the National Association of Realtors. They put out a great newsletter. Keeping Current Matters is one I really enjoy, as well as like Inman, which Inman you have to pay for, but my God, it's a never-ending supply of titles you want to debunk, because it's always very polarizing, misleading titles. So you have an opportunity to set the record straight a lot if you're using Inman articles. And then Google Alerts. I would set up Google Alerts for my name, for myself. I want to know if anybody's ever talking about me, and I would do it for every listing that I had for the address, because one time a listing showed up on Craigslist as a rental scam trying to get deposits for a rental when the property was not available for rent. So I will do that for my listings, so that way I can see when anybody is trying to potentially scam people using my listing. Your experience or lack thereof. Talk about your experiences, or as you're learning new things, turn around and teach them to the audience. They don't have to know that you just learned what a wind mitigation 4-point inspection is. They don't need to know that you just learned that yesterday, but you can teach them about it today. So consider, as you're going through your career and things pop up, or crazy situations, and you've solved them, or now know the trick, this is great content to educate the consumer. And then looking in those social media groups, chats, and online forums. So if you have local Facebook groups, or Nextdoor is one of those apps where you get on there and talk about what's going on in the community. There's always an opportunity to answer questions in those forums. Make sure you're always providing value, and you're not saying, yeah, call me. Don't, because they won't. Just give them the information they want. If you continually show up as the person who is just, oh yeah, here's the answer to that. No problem. Happy to help. And you step back, they're going to recognize that you are that one who's easily approachable, and not immediately trying to turn the conversation around. So, do you want to buy a house? Do you want to buy a house? Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be sold that way. So there's a plethora of conversations that you could get involved in, or it's an opportunity to look at the questions that get asked repeatedly and make content based on those questions. Definitely works especially well for a lot of the how-to, or what does this mean? How do I do this? Homeowner questions are a million a day are posted in those apps. So with that being said, I am right at 2:00 here. I think I'm good. If anybody has any questions, or Lisa, you have anything that you would like me to cover that I didn't?
No, I'd just like to open it up to everyone before you go. That's a lot of information. I don't know if we asked everybody what their social media level was before we got started. Kristen Comstock is still on our call. She's got quite a fantastic social media presence, so she's also a great resource for agents. But anybody else have any comments or questions about social media before we let Amy go? It is a part of our business today, so always good to explore how we can increase our presence.
Yeah, I say this a lot. You know that, Lisa. I say, congratulations, you got your real estate license. I bet you didn't know you signed up to be a digital marketer, because that is essentially what you have become at this point. Just best practices. You always want to speak highly of other real estate agents, and the practice itself. A lot of agents will get into that negative Nancy loop, or that, I hate to say, everything is always a female name when it says negative, right? That negative loop of like, oh, this agent did this, or oh, this sucks. the public picks up on the fact that you hate your job when you do that. So consider that. Would you recommend separating a business with okay, this is a question we've gotten a lot. It doesn't really matter as much anymore because initially you used to have a business profile because you couldn't, Facebook would even say you couldn't talk about business if it wasn't from a business profile. So what I have seen is you can create a personal profile and you can label it as a digital creator, which allows you to have all of the permissions and access that you would not get from a personal profile. But I would suggest that you consider the audience when you're posting, because if you have all of your family and friends and extended, just non-real estate people, they may get overwhelmed with the amount of real estate content, which is kind of why we talk about doing it sort of subtle like that, where you're talking about real estate, but you're not really talking about selling. So consider that if you have some of these more targeted, really trying to, grab the attention of a potential buyer or seller, you may want to have your audience segmented so that those posts are not necessarily seen by your immediate family or maybe like your coworkers at your last job, so that they don't block you or limit you. But really, I don't necessarily think it's as much of a need as it used to be before. However, things like Instagram, that's public. So there's no way to decide on what audience sees it or not. So you probably keep a personal Instagram profile for your friends and family, but you could have a public business Instagram profile, whereas in Facebook, it doesn't really matter as much. So hopefully that answered that, Cindy.
Now we have to ask for the order. And this is, again, where a lot of agents will just expect the consumer to say, hey, I want to work with you. And they're not going to. You are the one that has to really introduce the idea. I remember I was so bad at recruiting when I first started recruiting for my office. And one of the agents, I showed her all the things we had to offer, all the things we were doing. And she finally says to me, are you going to ask me to join? And it just didn't occur to me, I just didn't give the invitation. But that only had to happen to me once because I'm kind of good with picking up what people put down. So from there on, I always made sure at the end of the interview that I said, we would love to have you as a part of our office. And so are you saying after you've built rapport and you've shown your value, are you saying to them, I'm ready to go to work for you today? Or I would love to work with you to make sure we can make buying a home a huge win for you? Are you making the statement and letting them know that they would be a valuable customer to you? Because people want to feel valued. So how are you expressing that? So there's a couple things we can do. We're going to talk through these 3 techniques. The first is to match their motivation to our value. The second is to just reinforce our value. And the third is just ask for the order. So what does this look like when we match motivation to value? So if they're a first-time home buyer, you would use a value proposition like I did, where I have this experience and I've had a lender that'll help them work through any credit hiccups they might have. I'm going to let them know there's no shame working with me. I'm going to help you, guide you. I'm going to maybe share the home buyer workbook with them. If they're renting, they may not know a lot about the full financial picture of purchasing a home. So I may go through those 7 strategies to the lowest payment. I may talk to them about connecting them with the loan officer so they get a clear financial picture of what their monthly payment's going to be. If they're relocating for schools, maybe they've shared with me, I want to move because my daughter's going into school and I want her to go to better schools. Then we want to coordinate those logistics, like set up an interview with the principal, really help them make a decision that, now they're in love with this school and they absolutely have to live there. Of course, in Florida, that's a really dicey thing. Schools are never a sure thing when you're here in Florida. But relocation, we want to talk to them about the fact that we sometimes have off-market listings or pre-market listings that we can share with them, or that we're willing to just go knock doors so that we can find just the right home for them. How about their dream home? Maybe they've talked to you, we really want to make this the last house we ever buy. So can you connect them with a financial planner, or can you make sure that you're sharing with them some tips about moving and coordinating a dual closing in the same day? And then how about if they're downsizing? If they're downsizing, help them know about the 9 critical questions to ask, your active marketing plan. If someone comes into an open house and says they're downsizing, they're telling me they have a listing. So get right on the services you can offer them to get that home sold so they can buy the house that they're looking at the open house. And then again, we have relocation. And we suggest that you use the reverse funnel. And I'm going to put both this slide and the reverse funnel slide in your in the chat when we're done. So first of all, you have to know what the funnel is before you go to the reverse funnel. So when you work with the funnel, you're basically meeting someone. Maybe you met them at an open house. Maybe they're calling in on a listing for your team. And you're going to say to them, well, I'm going to send you some properties that you can take a look at. And then once we narrow those down, we'll go out, we'll go ahead and look at houses. And after we look at a few houses, then, you'll probably narrow it down to the one you want to buy. And then of course we'll go through the process, and here I'm going to show you this is what the process looks like, and we're going to talk about that this afternoon. That's the funnel. We talk to them, we take them through the process from here. It's nice to meet you, and these are all the things that are going to happen. Well, the reverse funnel technique works in an entirely different way. And this is a really great way to, if you're working with someone who, especially like in Florida and Nevada, where people are like, oh, I'm going to move here someday. I'm just out here looking at property, or they're not really set on a time frame. The reverse funnel technique actually, where are we getting? Did we lose? I don't know where the reverse funnel technique actually works them through in the opposite way. So I guess we'll go into that a little later. All right. So when we determine our value, we take a self-assessment, we take client feedback, we use real life example, and we craft our story. Our story matters. So just remember to ask them, where are we at? And tell the story. So one of the ways you can ask for the audition is also to review some special considerations about purchasing a home. So when can we meet so I can review with you the 5 special considerations about purchasing a home in Florida? When can we meet so I can go over the 7 home buyer strategies to the lowest mortgage payment? When can we meet to see some additional properties that you can use for comparison? Maybe we've met them at an open house. When can we meet to make buying a home in this market a huge win for you? So just asking them, when can we meet, is a great way to tie down and get a commitment to a meeting. So get the audition. Again, here's the funnel technique. We want to go from awareness into consideration. We want to form broad, open-ended questions. Want to ask maybe 11 to 14 questions. Use the RVA method or the funnel method or the reverse funnel method, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. Match the motivation to value, like we talked about. And this is the reverse funnel. So basically, when you work with the reverse funnel, and I love this technique because you're going to say to them, so take me into the future. When do you see yourself in your new home, keys in hand, deed signed, and ready to just enjoy your life in your new home? When do you think that'll be? So get them to say to you, Well, I think we just want to be moved by the end of the year. And so they'll say, but I just want to move by the end of the year. Now, to them, it's only July. They think like they have all the time in the world to find a home. And you say, oh my goodness, thank goodness you came to meet with me today. Because if you want to be in your home in January, do you know it takes anywhere from 60 to 90 days for a home to close? And so if we subtract those 90 days from January, now you're all the way in September. And of course, you need time to find your home. You're going to need time to look and really secure exactly the home you'd like. So between the 90 days it might take to work through the closing process and the 60 days that you'd probably want to take to find just the right home, it looks like we're just right on time starting here in July. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you some properties to look at this week. You got to promise me you'll review it because we really want to get you in that home by January. I'm going to set up that search and you're just going to make sure that when I send you something, we'll either get out to see it right away or we can eliminate it if there's something in the listing I send you that you don't want. But we really need to get started if we get you in that house by January. So does everyone track how that works? And is that a new concept to anyone? Tell me how that sits. How does that land?
I love it.
Yeah,
I've never heard of it, but I like it.
Yeah. I had never heard of it either before I started doing this class. And this is from Shana Moats in Texas. And she used this with her team. And I thought, wow, that's really brilliant because it's taking me from the outcome. And they're very clear on the outcome they want, but they don't know the process on how to get there. So if we can just get them to state their outcome, we can work them backward to show our value. So where do objections come from? Because we know we often will meet objections in the process. It either comes from a lack of motivation or a lack of trust. Now, there's not a whole lot we can do if it's a lack of motivation. And this is where I see a lot of agents waste their time. If they're working with someone who really isn't motivated to move, we can't motivate someone. We can only motivate them, right? We can give them assistance, but we can't really provide. It's just like teenagers. You're never going to motivate them. You can give them incentives, but they have to have their own motivation. But we can examine if it's a lack of trust. So if it's a lack of trust, they probably need more questions answered. What is missing that they don't trust you? And you have to really explore that. So any questions about our establishing and relationship building, because we're kind of going to put this to bed at this point. What has shifted for you in this conversation about candor and value and rapport building and asking for the order? Or if anything, or is this all, wow, you just wasted your morning. You didn't really pick up anything new.
It's always good to learn.
Awesome. All right, well, let's move into lead generation. I know everyone breaks out in hives when they hear those words, but Robert Palmer says that you cannot be a successful real estate agent if you're not also a successful prospector. So what is lead generation? What's the best timing? Is it scary? Is it important? Well, the answer is yes. So lead generation is the cultivation of potential clients through building relationships. Remember, leads are people. So we should diversify our lead generation. We should work with our database, but we should also do some prospecting and marketing. So what does that look like? Prospecting is active. It's either low or no cost. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be door knocking, open houses, calling for sale by owners, Marketing is passive. It can be more expensive, but that's why we're happy to be with LPT and have this brokerage powered marketing. It's going to take less time because it's one to many instead of one to one. So what are some examples of lead generation activity? Well, in the marketing arena, you are very fortunate to be with LPT Realty because we've got you covered. We have our prospecting power packs. There's 320 pieces of collateral in every listing power pack, prospecting power pack that really helps you with those door hangers, postcards, folding business cards, ways for you to really assist in the prospecting process. We also have what we call our lead magnets or our magazines that help you with marketing and lead generation. Like I said, the Homebuyer Workbook is really an all-inclusive document that really helps the buyer decide to work with you as a consumer. Also, we have the Home Buyer Strategies. That could be a coffee table book that you could leave at a local doctor's office or Jiffy Lube or wherever there's a coffee table where people have a waiting room. The 9 critical questions, the active marketing plan. These are all things that can be used. And again, that's why your face and contact information are featured right on the front of the magazines. We also have our open house power pack. There's 188 total pieces involved in the open house strategy. There's a before, during, and after strategy that this prospecting open house box will really help you with. We have our Home Buyer Workbook. Like I said, these can be ordered individually, and that would be great if you're going to host a home buyer seminar. So here are some other lead generation and lead cultivation activities that you can involve yourself in. We have database connection. Hopefully within your team, you have a day or two of the week that everyone comes in and calls through the database with some kind of offer of the week. We have lead warming reconnection calls. That's really famous in a lot of teams have old leads that have been neglected or set aside. And sometimes you can call through these old leads and warm them up again. We can do circle prospecting around a new listing or around an open house. Can have follow-up Friday, or as I like to call it, FU Friday, right? We can follow up on Fridays with all those people that are waiting to hear from us. We have their phone number written on a gum wrapper. It's in our purse. We have no idea even what they're looking for anymore, but we know they're a lead. And rather than let them die, don't let them drop off. Humble yourself and say, look, I have your phone number on a gum wrapper. I'm a realtor. You must have a real estate need. I didn't even write down your name. I apologize, but I never let a lead go without following up. So I wanted to let you know I'm following up, right? Referral rallies. A lot of times teams will have these rallies where they're asking their database to call in. It's a nice, maybe they're going to give away an iPad or something if anyone calls in for a raffle or something. Now remember, especially in Las Vegas, I'll tell you, the only people allowed to gamble in Las Vegas are the casinos. And so there are very strict rules there. And in New Jersey, where I was also from, very strict rules around holding raffles. So really be careful with that and connect with your state broker. Two-way social media interaction. That's a great way to lead generate. Not if you're just posting to social media, but if you're actually using those direct message features where you can actually engage with someone. Geographic farming. Door knocking days where the whole team maybe goes out and works certain neighborhoods. I think that's great activity for a team to engage in. Market updates, really, really important. There's lots of resources for us as agents. If you want to, you can come to my class tomorrow morning about becoming a market insight leader. That definitely will help you get your resources for market data. I love the hot deal day. So maybe once a month, you'll call through your sphere of influence or text them. I love texting. This is just this is the best property available in our marketplace right now. Doesn't even have to be your listing. Again, two-way social conversations are great. Is there a link for your class tomorrow? Yes, I can post that in the chat in a little bit. And then event follow-up, photos, and fun stories. We can definitely follow up with our, after an event that you have. Don't let it just be, hey, we had a great party. Make sure you send thank you notes to everyone for coming to your party. Make sure that you're popping in a picture and sending it over on their phone in a text message. If you took a cute picture of their child or something, you're always following up from the events and getting more energy from that event than just going to the event. And then do giveaways and contests. Again, confirm with your state broker if that's okay. And then any creative ideas you may have or your team may have, you can always engage in some type of lead generation. So this is the way to contact your state broker. Colorado, let me see where we have. Nevada is NV Brokers at LPT Realty, and then of course is FL Brokers at lptrealty.com for your broker. If you have any questions about raffles or giveaways or any of that stuff, you want to confirm with your state broker. It's really important to fully understand and to comply with the Telecommunications Protection Act and to the Do Not Call registry before you engage in any type of phone call lead generation, because that is your responsibility. And if you're calling someone that's on the Do Not Call list, $11,000, I think the last time I checked, is the fine. It is not covered by your E&O insurance. It is not covered by LPT. That would be an individual agent responsibility. So be very careful to scrub your calling list if you're using one. So what are some of the right now lead generations? So we have open houses, as we've talked about. There's expired listings. So expired listings are a resource for sale by owners and referrals or agent VIP agent referrals or VIP customer referrals. These are all great right now lead generation. So one of our listing power rules is to get out and meet the neighbors. So with open houses, we want to make sure that we're using that open house power box to do some circle prospecting ahead before the event. We want to contact as many people as possible. Having people come to our open house, we're not expecting necessarily to sell that house. So don't get discouraged. Oh my goodness, I sat an open house. I've sat 20 open houses and I've never sold a house. No, but you've probably collected 200 people that you've added to your database. And if you're working it correctly, has already turned into business of selling them another house. So it's to add context to your database. It's also to uncover nurtures that could buy very soon. And then to build your brand awareness. And especially when we're working on teams have specific neighborhoods that they're really focused on, and they want their team members to do as many open houses as possible, because every time you have a directional sign out there, you're imprinting on someone's brain about the team. So the pro is that they're inexpensive and they have a high conversion ratio. The con is that open houses are very time intensive. And that's why a lot of times teams will lean on their newer members to do open houses for them. Then we have expired listings. Our goal, again, is to add context to the database. So even if we don't secure that expired listing, we may be able to build a little bit of a rapport with them that we can add them to the database. And then we want to set appointments if we can, and again, uncover nurtures if we aren't able to set an appointment. The pro is their motivation is already uncovered. They've already had their home listed. We know they want to sell their house. The con is that there's a very limited number of expired listings out there, and many agents focus on expired listings as a lead generation source. So you will have quite a bit of competition when you get into expired listings. For sale by owners, again, these people have raised their hand and said, I want to sell my house. We might not actually get the for sale by owner to list with us, but we could add additional contacts to our database. Maybe they'll let you do an open house at their home, or maybe they'll share with you any of the potential buyers who came in but maybe couldn't afford their home, or just weren't interested in for some other reason. Maybe they'll share those with you if you're making an even exchange with them and giving them some helpful information. Another con with for sale by owners, just like with expires, there's a lot of competition because many experienced agents will focus on for sale by owners as a source of listings. Agent to agent referrals actually the most fun way to do business and a great way to expand our reach beyond our local economy into other parts of the country. So the goal is to receive referrals. One great way to meet other LPT agents is to go to our events like the one we have happening in October. But maybe if you can't afford the $1,000 price tag of the October event, stop by at our August 3-day event for only $199, and that's held at LPT headquarters. So we have the ability to build relationships and to build our brand awareness. Again, the pro is it's inexpensive and it's fun. The con is it takes a while until you get a referral from another agent, but it is something that can happen. And in the case of my daughter, she does a lot of agent to agent referrals because she's always out and about. Plus she's lived in a couple of different states, so she has some connections in other places, so she's able to build a decent referral business. So here's an example, as we talked about in our Connect ecosystem, the ability to connect with agents from around the country. So you don't have to wait to necessarily go to that October event to meet people. You could actually meet the people that are on this call today and exchange referrals with them. So one of our other listing power rules is to never neglect those we know. So 82% of all real estate transactions, according to the National Association of Realtors, actually occurred with someone who had a relationship with the agent outside of real estate. So 82% of all real estate transactions originate with the sphere of influence. That's so significant. That means all those other things, for sale by owners, expireds, all that stuff, only adds up to 18%. And this is why your Rainmaker will be encouraging you to contact the people in your sphere of influence and expand the database for the team. Don't ask for referrals, inspire them. So what are you going to be doing with your value proposition to really inspire those referrals? So here's 8 strategies for your sphere of influence referrals. The first is postcards. Every single month, the people in your sphere of influence should be getting at least one postcard from you saying, here's what I did in real estate. And the reason why you want to do that is when you get together with people in your sphere of influence, you don't want to talk to them about what you do. You want to make that conversation about them, but you have to reinforce that you're a successful realtor. So hopefully they're getting at least one postcard a month with something that's happening in your business that is making you successful. Another good contact with your sphere of influence is reminders. So reminding them to set the clocks back, but also, because I grew up in a family of firemen and police officers, the time that you turn the clock ahead or turn the clock back is also a time to change your smoke detector battery. And a lot of people don't realize that battery, even in the electronic ones that are hardwired in your house, they have a backup smoke detector battery, and we should change those twice a year. As a matter of fact, I ran a campaign once where I actually offered to bring them the 9-volt battery to put in their smoke detector. Email campaigns can be very successful, but we should limit them. We shouldn't depend completely on email, but a once a month email is definitely in order. Handwritten cards. Again, the Postal Service says that people only get 21 pieces of handwritten mail per year. So writing a handwritten card to someone is like the secret sauce of building a relationship. Just think of the last time you received a handwritten note and how special it was to you. Sponsoring community events or just participating in community events is really essential. Holidays are a great time to connect with people, sending them a card, sending them a text message on their birthday, leaving them a voice message, singing happy birthday, something like that could be really, really impactful. How about developing a best list? Do you have local vendors that you work with that you can share with people? Who's the best plumber? Who's the best hairstylist? Where's the best restaurants? Can you start developing a way to communicate things to do around town? That's a best list. Again, that was brought up in Amy's social media class. How can you leverage social media to keep in contact with your sphere of influence? We know at LPT to trust classic marketing. When you have a tangible piece of marketing material, it actually creates what we call tactile engagement. That tactile engagement involves more than one sense. They can see it, but they can also touch it, and they can save it, and it stays in front of them much longer than just a piece of digital advertising. And so we have our full collateral marketing system that we've all talked about today. So one of your challenges is to empty the box. Use those handwritten notes. Don't just throw them aside. Use the door hangers for door-to-door conversations. Use those large color neighborhood insight flyers at your open houses in order to create conversation starters. And then use the marketing kit guides like the home buyer workbook. So here's one of the reasons why we need to practice our conversations, because many people are like, oh, I know all this, Lisa. I know this. But you have to consider practice like a GPS system. One of the reasons why we practice is so that we can get to the destination, and when we get there, we're not fumbling over the words. So most agents don't come into the business with the skill set to convert people. They come, maybe they're friendly, but again, we have to really hone those skills. Write out the questions you might ask people to ask for the order. And then it takes practice to develop those conversion skills that we've been talking about today. So we're going to go into our next section, which is working with buyers. All right, so here we are. We're going to dive into the afternoon of working with buyers, and we're going to incorporate negotiation and lists, and maybe I'll be able to get you out of here a little early today. We'll see. I would invite your questions and participation too. Feel like I'm giving you a lecture. I don't love lecture style classes. So we talked about this being the buyer journey, and let me also put that in the chat for you.
I was going to say it's been so thorough. I don't have any questions. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. So we have buyer. So we have the match and match motivation to value and the reverse funnel slides I put in the chat, and also want to put for you the buyer, and I'm actually going to put the buyer and seller journey in here for you, because these are really helpful to use with a buyer or seller when you first meet them. This is kind of what the journey looks like. Things that we do in the process, and agents just think, or consumers just think we're a lockbox key, right? All we do is open the house and they pick a house and then they go to closing. And there's so much more. There's potentially 30 people involved in a real estate transaction, and we're the person that coordinates all of that. So this is what the process looks like. And for order for you to be the calm and knowledgeable guide that's going to lead them through this process, you have to be really solid on the process yourself. And so what does that look like? Well, one of our listing power rules is to always give a presentation. And over the years, I've seen this as the biggest mistake that agents will make is they'll shortchange a friend or family member. Maybe we've known someone our whole life and we're going to help them buy a house, and we never do a consultation with them. And they're exactly the person that then gets really hung up on some part of the process, and they feel like we shortchanged them, and we did. So I'm going to tell you, even if it's your mother, do a buyer consultation with them, because it's been a long time since they've bought a house. You really want to keep them up to date with the new process. And if you don't want to use a paper process, you always have your digital buyer consultation that at least walks them through the basics of their process. We can also use the digital collateral that gives them a much more enhanced ability. If you use the home buyer workbook, is comprehensive, so you don't need all the other checklists if you use the workbook. But sometimes we don't want to give the whole workbook to someone, so we may just want to drip it out over time and using like a needs versus wants checklist, just that one sheet of paper to get started, and then move them through the process, having a piece of collateral for each step of the way. So what is the 5-step home buyer consultation? So we're going to give a consultation. We want to have these 5 elements in our consultation. The first is we want to get a pre-approval and get a signed BBA. Then we want to move into a needs analysis. We want to be able to share community and market information. We definitely want to map out the process for them. That's why I just shared those 2 maps that I shared with you. You're going to fill in the gaps in those maps, but give them a map of the process. One of the most important things when you're leaving someone is to say what's next, because that's one of the things, especially people who are on a team and they're being sent out to cold leads. So sometimes when you're on a team, especially if you have a team that has Zillow leads coming in, or they're paying for some kind of analytic leads, you as a team member are going to meet people that you've never met before. And the worst thing you can do is meet them, show them a house. Maybe you didn't do a consultation. Hopefully you won't do that. At least you'll do a consultation. You've shown them a house, but you forget to say what's next. And then I hear agents complaining to me all the time, they're ghosting me. Well, you didn't explain to them what your expectations were and what was going to happen next. That's why I really like that reverse funnel system. That's why always sharing with them what's going to happen next will secure your next appointment. And sometimes what's going to happen next is we're going to meet next week. You're going to just take an assumptive close and say, you know what? I'm sorry we're disappointed in the houses that we saw today, but I know I'm going to be able to find something better. So let's meet next week. And I'm going to really work on finding something that meets the criteria we talked about today. So always setting that next appointment before you part from this appointment will really increase your chances of not being ghosted. And then always show up like no one else. Again, that's going to increase your chances of meeting with these people again, because you're not quite like all the other realtors that they've met with so far. So before we go any further, I want to talk about negotiating, because sometimes negotiating can happen right at the very first meeting. We're going to ask them to sign a BBA. We're going to ask them to get a pre-approval. And they might say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sign a BBA. I don't want to get a pre-approval. So we're going to have to enlist our negotiation skills immediately sometimes in the transaction. But there's multiple places, and we'll see as we go through the buyer relationship how many times we're actually going to have to lean into negotiation. So what does the word negotiate mean? Well, here's what Merriam-Webster says: to discuss something formally in order to make an agreement. So we want to focus on leading to an agreement. We don't want to just be right. We don't want to ever tell someone they're wrong, because the minute we make it about right and wrong, we take them further away from agreement. So the number one thing we want to do with negotiation is work toward an agreement. That means we aren't bullies. That means we are not looking for just one outcome. The second definition says to agree on something by formally discussing it. And this is a really important reminder for us as realtors. The only way we formally discuss something is by putting it in writing on an addendum. And one of the biggest mistakes that agents make is they'll agree to something with the other agent without confirmation from the seller that the agreement was actually agreed to. And now we have an overzealous listing agent that's like, oh yeah, that sounds reasonable. I'm sure I can get him to do that. And then they don't realize that they have an unreasonable customer that's not going to do what the agent agreed to. And now we have a real mess. So always make sure that you have a written addendum, but also make sure that you've run that addendum by your lender before you sign it, because especially when things happen in a home inspection, you don't want to put in a home inspection taking a $5,000 credit to repair the horrible roof, right? Then we're not going to get our insurance. We're not going to get a mortgage. Be really careful about what you put in writing on an addendum. So check with your lender to make sure you're not writing something that's going to torpedo your transaction. And the third and final point is to get over, through, or around something successfully. And I really like that they include this, because sometimes when we're negotiating, we might not be negotiating for the right thing, or we're not thinking as creatively as we could in order to get to the right solution. And I just heard I have a friend who's a lender, and she posted on Facebook today that she's starting to see more and more appraisals coming back low. But there's a technique with FHA. If the appraisal is lower, you can do a 203K loan light, 203K light, and that will let the borrower take 110% of the appraised value, which will then get them to the number that they need so they can close. So don't always think of just one way or one approach to get to a solution, but rather how can you get over, through it, or around it. Don't go in with just one outcome in mind. A great book, if you want to do some extra research, is Never Split the Difference. It's a book about negotiating, and I love everything about it except the title, because the title kind of indicates we're not going to cooperate or we're not going to negotiate, when in fact it's all about negotiation. All right, so what are the stages? Well, stage one is to set expectations. Every relationship starts with expectations. My husband teases me. He's like, yeah, on our first date, you said to me, I drive a new car and I go on 2 vacations a year, and I don't expect to get married and have my lifestyle go down. Well, I don't think I was that horrible, but it was probably something close to it. So, what are the expectations? we have that initial consultation so that we can set the stage for the entire process. You want to drive the bus. It's not that you're in control. We're going to be working in tandem with our consumer to get them where they want to go, but only we can drive because we know the terrain. We know how to operate the bus, right? So they might have some crazy ideas on how things work. We've got to bring them into alignment with what really happens. So we want to lead them and adjust their expectations to match the market and the process. If we're on a listing appointment, the seller might be like, yeah, and when the 22 offers come in on my house, right? Well, we're not in that market anymore. So we have to definitely bring their expectations in line with the market and the process. So here's a place where expectations need to be addressed, okay? And as you can see, there's tons of places here. I should make this into a shareable slide too, by the way, but I don't. So take a screenshot of it if you'd like. So the first thing is we want to set expectations around disclosures. All sellers are required to disclose any material defects, but we do sometimes have sellers who aren't playing by those rules. So we want to make sure that we're going to tell our buyer we're going to get a disclosure. The seller should put things that have happened in the house on that disclosure, but we're also going to do a home inspection to double check the safety and the expectancy of the product of the house. Lead paint disclosure. You might have an agency relationship disclosure in your state. We don't have that in Florida anymore. I want to set expectations regarding the process. They're going to sign a buyer brokerage agreement. They're going to get a pre-approval. You're going to sign a listing agreement if you're listing your house. We're going to talk about market conditions. We've really got to get skilled about that conversation of the risk of overpricing. We have to talk about affordability, how we have a generation of buyers that over 75% of the world population will be millennials as of 2025. And so the millennial generation is earning money. They're no longer have purple hair and a nose ring or in high school. Like, these are memories that some people have of the millennial generation. The youngest millennials turned 40 in 2020. They're now 45 years old. So we need to talk about maybe having to do seller contributions, because a lot of this generation has a lot of debt. They make great money, but they have a lot of debt, so the seller may have to make some contributions. Transaction management. Are we setting up the right expectation regarding timelines, what obligations they have, when will home inspections be done, what will happen around appraisal? There's a great expectation setting script for appraisals when we're working with a seller, and we tell them, when your home is sold, the buyer's going to get an appraisal if they're not paying cash. And there are times in a transitioning market like we're experiencing right now where the appraisal will come in less than the asking, yet less than the contract price. And this is really good news because you haven't left one penny of equity on the table. Now, if we have that conversation ahead of time, on the listing appointment, then when that low appraisal comes in, we have this reference point to go back to and say, wow, this is really good news. It means you haven't left one penny of equity on the table. And that means we have some choices now to make. We can either reduce the price, the buyer can bring more money, or we can come up with a compromise, right? But we've set the stage before the bad thing happened that it could happen, but we won't give up even if it happens. We'll have some choices, and now we have these choices to make. Does that make sense? And then communication. Are you going to set expectations around communication? Do you want to work 24/7? Do you want people to be able to call you at midnight and expect you to answer the phone? Or are you going to explain to them, I'm available to you from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. After that, I do kind of decompress. If there's any kind of real estate emergency, and none has ever happened in the 30 years I've been selling real estate, but if you need to get me after 8 p.m., then I suggest you send a text message and I'll have it come to my watch or something. I don't know what you're going to say. I don't want to talk to people after 8 o'clock. I'm probably in bed. They can call me at 4 o'clock in the morning, but not at late at night. But how do you want to work? It doesn't matter. Maybe you're a night person. Don't call me before 10 a.m. in the morning. What is your system? What standard do you want to set? And then do you have a written marketing plan? Now, of course, if you're with LPT, of course you do, because we have our active marketing plan. But in addition to that, do you have something in writing that you share with them? What are your standards? And then talk about expectation of what happens when things don't go right. Every transaction, we have this conversation in the beginning, so it's not shocking. Every transaction sometimes will go off the rails. And I have a specific process that I will help you get things back in order. Now, there are some times when we'll just need to cancel the contract, but we're going to work through all the tools in my toolbox before we ever give up on a property. So what is your recovery process? And explain that to them. And then referrals. Talk to them about giving you referrals even from the first time you meet them, because they're going to be talking to a lot of other people that are doing the same type of activity. Why not get referrals while you're giving them great service in the beginning, and thereby training them like this is an ongoing relationship, right? So these are just some of the places where expectations can be set. Negotiation stage 2 is conflict, and conflict will arise even sometimes on the first meeting. I don't want to sign my BBA. But remember, you are the calm and knowledgeable guide. Lots of times it's because they need more information or they have a misalignment of their expectations. So again, investing in stage 1 will sometimes help prevent stage 2. And one of the best ways to navigate conflict, don't jump in and argue. No one wants to be told they're wrong. So the best way to navigate conflict is to stay curious and just ask, help me understand. Help me understand your viewpoint, Taryn. Let me understand why this is so important to you. Because until I do, it's really hard for me to advocate for you, right? So really taking that time, help me understand. That will diffuse some of the emotion around conflict, just because you've put yourself on their side, even if they're completely way off. But just help me understand will take down that emotion. So when we get in conflict, we want to describe what is the issue, get really clear about exactly what the issue is. Then you want to express it. So again, ask them, help me understand, express what is actually where you're having a difficulty, to specify specifically what they would like to do to remedy the situation, and then review with them the consequences. And especially here in Florida, since several of you are from Florida, our FAR as is contract is written when you do a home inspection. It is basically to take it or leave it. And unfortunately, a lot of consumers don't realize that, and they want you to write an addendum requesting repairs after they've done a home inspection, and it's a Florida FAR as is contract. They need to understand when they send over those repair requests, they are essentially canceling their contract. They are no longer operating within the terms of the contract, and the seller could sell the house to someone else without ever addressing it, because once they've asked for repairs, they've breached the contract. So be really aware and letting the consumer know about the consequences. Now, we're not in that runaway train, 100 offers on every house kind of market anymore. So definitely you want to be an advocate for your buyer. If you found something that was undisclosed and it's really serious in that home inspection, then certainly you want to, address it, but also understand the consequences of addressing it. Then we move into stage 3, which, remember I said, help me understand. Now we're going to move into understanding. And this is where you will show your skill or lack of it, because you start to walk this fine line between being an advocate for your buyer or simply being transactional and pushing them to just close because you need to pay your mortgage. Well, that's not fair. We want to definitely be an advocate for our buyer. But it doesn't mean that we give in to unreasonable demands. We want to appreciate their position, but we also want to move them toward their goal of purchasing a home. And so sometimes buyers just have cold feet. Sometimes they're not being reasonable because they have unrealistic expectations. So where can we really spend some time in understanding, is this a real concern? Or did this person just have a fight with their husband last night and now they're trying to back out of the contract because they're just pissed off at the world, right? So find out where that is. Really try and take time to understand where they're at. And then comes compromise. And boy, don't I wish we lived in a world where compromise was celebrated. Woohoo! I went home and I didn't get exactly my own way tonight. We had spinach instead of asparagus because that's what my husband wanted, and I'm so happy about it. But no, we don't live in that world. We live in a world where everybody wants it 100% their way. I blame Burger King. Have it your way. They started it back in the 70s. It's all their fault that we live in this world now, right? So we need to help people understand that compromise is a good thing, because that's where the magic happens. So if you have a thorough understanding of what their goal is and you really understand their motivation, then you should be able to move them toward compromise. And a really good negotiation is where every party walks away saying, I didn't exactly get everything I wanted. That means you were a really great negotiator, that everybody literally gave a little bit to make it work. And then stage 5 is agreement. So it took a lot of time to get here. Woohoo! Take a minute to celebrate. Also remind the buyer where they had a place where they did win, where even though they didn't get it 100% their way, they're actually moving forward with the house they wanted. And then most importantly, you need to memorialize this in an agreement in writing on an addendum. And again, work with your lender or your team leader when you're constructing that addendum so you don't put a cyanide pill in your transaction. So those are the 5 stages of negotiation before we move back into our buyers. Any questions or comments? It's going to come up again, but does this give you clarity a little bit around the negotiation process?
Yes.
Awesome. Now let's see it in practical terms. So here we are back again at the 5-step buyer consultation. We've got our digital buyer consultation. So pre-approval, this is my favorite way to ask for pre-approval, because when you say to someone, are you pre-approved? It's like, hey, do you want to take an algebra test? And immediately their palms start sweating and their armpits start itching and they're like, ick, I can fail this. I'm scared now and I don't like Lisa. So when we say to someone, have you spoken with a mortgage lender to confirm your purchasing power? It really is empowering, and there's no wrong answer. Because if they say, oh no, great, that's wonderful. I have Lynn Whitefall from Supreme Lending. She's an amazing lender. She's going to help you understand all the implications of owning a home. And I've worked with her for years. You're going to be so happy. So that they don't have to be nervous. They said, no, I'm not upset about that at all. I can connect them with a lender I trust. As a matter of fact, I'd rather do that, and a lot of times, than have them bring their own lender. But maybe they say, oh yes, I have this pre-approval. It's from my Uncle Billy Bob Joe, whatever. Okay, we've got an approval. We say, oh, that's great. Is he working here in the Florida area, or is he an out-of-state lender? Does he work with a credit union? I mean, kind of find a little bit about him. But there's no wrong answer, because they don't fail by saying no. And that's why I like this question. You could also say, are you paying cash, or have you spoken with a mortgage lender? If you want to, some people like to say, will you be paying cash? Because it's like kind of like saying, oh, I see you pulled up in your Rolls Royce. That's a compliment to people if you say, are you paying cash? I don't know. I don't usually do that, but some people like that. And then we can move into either our 7 home buyer strategies or our home buyer workbook. We have this great collateral that helps them through the process. And now we could hit our first level of negotiation. They don't want to sign the buyer brokerage agreement. And then we might have to backtrack and use one of these tools to explain to them, this is a part of the process now. Oh, well, I worked with another agent and they didn't make me sign anything. Well, this is your opportunity to say, well, I'm curious, because the Department of Justice actually passed there was a lawsuit that says we all have to have this signed as of August of 2024. So I wonder if your agent is really up to speed with all of the laws and regulations around real estate. That's concerning to me. So don't back down on things that you need to have done. And they're probably lying. There's not another agent that didn't make them sign anything, but you need to call them out on it, and in a polite way, and say, I'm really curious. Maybe you're not working with an agent that's familiar with the law, because I have to work within the parameters that are given to me by the Department of Justice. And that says that I have to get a buyer agreement signed. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sign one forever. We can just sign a touring agreement that says that if you purchase any of the homes that we see here today, that you'll purchase that through me and LPT. And that sounds fair, doesn't it? And that's my favorite clothesline, by the way, and that sounds fair, doesn't it? That's always, because like, what are you going to say? No, that's not fair. It's reasonable. I'm going to spend the entire day showing you property. Yeah, you better buy one from me if you want it. So it's fair. That's how we can move through that. Then we're going to show properties. Now, one of the things we want to do is make sure we prepare an itinerary and review that itinerary. And several of you on the call, like Karen, you've been licensed for a couple years. Kelly, you've been licensed for 5 years. So it's important to prepare an itinerary, again, telling them what's going to happen. Here's the houses we're going to see. You may want to send it to them. We have a really great app here in Florida. The Stellar MLS has a one-touch app that you don't necessarily have to print out itineraries anymore. You can share them. But you want to review. Here's the houses we're going to see. Preview the houses when possible. Oh my goodness, as a broker, I used to see this all the time. I would have been in a property on Broker Caravan, and I see the agent in the office really talking it up. Oh, this is a gorgeous house, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't see it. They've only seen it online. Well, what they don't realize is the pictures that are in the MLS are from 3 tenants ago, and there's actually a railroad track behind the house. And they're talking it up to this or buyer thinking that this is going to be the one, and they go there and it looks like who did it and ran. So when you can, preview the property. And then go beyond the features and benefits. You're not a host on Wheel of Fortune. You don't have to be, talking about here's the kitchen, here's the bathroom. I mean, they can pretty much figure out there's not a toilet in the kitchen, right? So talk about how they'll live in the house, not just the features and benefits, but how will they enjoy their family that they shared. Oh, I love to have my sister and her kids over every weekend. Look at this deck and this great backyard. You'll refer to that. And then what I really love is to evaluate each property after you've shown it. So when you finish the day together, or even after each property, say, well, if you had to give this house a star rating, what would you give it? And they'll say, oh, this is a 1 star. Oh, good. All right, we know we don't have to. But what if they say, well, this is a 4-star house? Then you say, well, what would make it a 5, right? And then you know you're getting closer to what they want. Be curious about it, ask them, but get those evaluations to see if you're getting close. And then what's next? Always, again, I talked about this quite at length already, but always tell me what's next after we've shown properties. Don't just leave me in the parking lot and I don't know if I'm ever going to hear from you again. Again, a lot of times that's our fault. And then what to do when they're out and about. And this is really critical if you work in Las Vegas or in Florida where we have new construction as an option, because we want to explain to people when you go to new construction, it's like walking into a Toyota dealership. They only have one type of car to sell and they're going to push hard to sell that product. Whereas when you work with a realtor, I know what Toyota is offering. I also know what Mazda has and what you might be able to get from Hyundai. And I'll be able to help you negotiate the best possible transaction when you work with a builder, because I'm familiar with all of the different products and I'd be happy to represent you. Because, you know, in the state of Florida, there's no such thing as a unilateral contract. But when it comes to new construction, that's about as close to unilateral as you can get. And I wouldn't want you to be in that transaction unrepresented, right? So explain to them, here's some of my cards, give them, if you happen to go into an open house or into new construction, don't sign in, just give them my card and tell them I'll follow up with them. So explain to them how to handle when they're not with you. And then ask them, what can I do to improve your experience? Just flat out ask, how can I make this better for you? It's a great question and sometimes can really bring you good results. So that's what you're going to do when you're showing property. Now they've settled on one. Woo woo! Awesome. Now we've decided we want to move forward and make an offer. This is, again, where we need to set expectations, because some sellers and buyers, some buyers have a mistaken understanding, thinking if there's multiple offers that somehow the seller is required to come back to everybody and say, what's your best and final offer? That's something that maybe happens in the movies, but is not really required. So we have to explain to them, okay, so we're going to make an offer. I'm so excited. This is great. Now, 3 things could happen when we make your offer. We can make your offer to the seller and the seller could simply reject your offer. They don't have to counter. And as a matter of fact, if they have an offer in front of them that's better than ours, they could accept that other offer and just simply contact us and say, we've rejected your offer and we're going to go in a different direction. So I don't want you to get upset about that, but it also is a good argument for putting our best foot forward. So there's no obligation for a seller to come back. So we want to make sure that we try to make an offer that they'll at least counter, which is the next option. So they can reject our offer or they could counter our offer. Now, when they counter, that means our original offer no longer stands. So that's risky for the seller. And again, if you're on the seller side, which we're not talking about right now, but if you're on the seller side, you need to really encourage a seller to accept an offer as it's written if you're in a market that's declining. Because the minute they counter, that offer no longer exists. Now there's a new offer on the table that the buyer may reject. And then the wonderful thing that happens when they accept our offer. So I think we've written a really strong offer here, and I'm excited about presenting it to the other agent. I'm going to go ahead and reach out to her. Hopefully we'll hear from her tonight. But if not, just make sure that you're available when I hear from them. I'll reach out to you as soon as possible. What time is too late to call you tonight? So really setting up, what does it look like to present your offer? Again, we can end up having to negotiate with our own customer at this point, explaining to them, yes, I know that the news says the market has changed, but that doesn't mean you can offer 50% off the asking price. You know, people are ridiculous. So we want to make sure that we let them know if they have an unrealistic expectation with their offer. Now we've got the offer accepted, we've got a contract, everybody's happy, and now it's time for home inspection. Well, now, especially when we were in the days where everyone was offering over asking, People sometimes thought they could use their home inspection to actually claw back some of the money that they had spent over the asking price. And Kelly, you're probably familiar with that. Taryn, too, if you've had your license since 2020, you might be familiar with that as well, where people thought, oh, well, during the home inspection, I'll just get back some of my money that I offered over asking. And after all, they should make the house perfect because I paid $20,000 over their asking price. Well, that's not necessarily how home inspections work. So we need to help set that expectation that what a home inspection is. It's a process that's designed to uncover undisclosed defects. So if the seller told us that the roof was 20 years old, we can't now ask for a credit because the roof is 20 years old, especially if it's not leaking. However, if during our home inspection we discover that the roof is leaking, that's a new undisclosed defect that we weren't aware of when we made our offer. Does that make sense, right? So it's an opportunity for the buyer to reaffirm their choice. So make sure that you go on home inspection, because the home inspector's job is to actually pick this house apart. That's what he's being paid to do. But our job is to make sure that our buyer still stays in love with this house. It's just like what I explain to them generally when I'm walking into a home inspection. I say, you remember when you and your husband were dating? And then you decided you were going to get married, and it was such an amazing experience, that courtship and your wedding. It was amazing. Then we go into the first 2 years of marriage. Well, that's kind of what this home inspection is going to be. You're going to find out that that house isn't perfect like you thought it was. You might find out that they burp after they eat, or, they come home late from work. You're going to find some things that happen that you weren't necessarily aware of when you were dating. And that's the same thing with the house. But remember, we didn't make an offer and we didn't inspect all those other houses that we looked at. And likely those would have things that would come up in a home inspection too. So really set up the appointment that this isn't to make the house perfect. It's designed to familiarize the buyer with the home. I love to work with home inspectors that give little home maintenance books with their services, or maybe they'll even do a video or allow you. This is a really value add that you could do. Whenever I have an inspector that's showing them how to change their filters, or how to bleed the hot water heater, or the simple maintenance things like where the water shutoff is, or how the circuit box is labeled, take a video. Ask the inspector, do you mind if I video you doing this? And then at the end of that, you can send those videos to the buyer after they close. I'm sure you forget some of these things, but these are important. Change your filters every 6 months, put the video with that, and that kind of thing. So it's especially helpful protection for agents. So we are not home inspectors, nor do we play one on TV. So this is not the time to argue with the inspector. So as you can see on the right-hand side, what an inspection is not. It's not designed to renegotiate the contract. It's not an opportunity for the buyer to say, oh, there's an old kitchen here. It's going to cost me X amount of dollars to put in a new kitchen. Well, too bad. It was an old kitchen when you made your offer. It's not designed to damage the property in any way. And unfortunately, in 30 years, I have had the experience where the home inspector broke the dishwasher. And I don't think he would have admitted it if I wasn't there to see him do it. So I think it's really important that we go on our inspections and monitor the activities. And I actually had this horrible experience with the buyer who didn't even actually buy a very expensive home from me. He was back in the day. This was like in the 90s. I was a newer agent, and he was buying a $700,000 home, which was a lot of money to me. It would be my top sale at that point. I think it was only in the business a couple years. And he literally poked a screwdriver. I don't even know how he had the screwdriver with him, but he poked a screwdriver through the EIFS siding on this house I was selling in New Jersey and they used to use a siding for Tudor front homes that really just was like a styrofoam. And it was bad because it would collect water, and that's where a lot of black mold came from, blah, blah, blah. But like, he just took it upon himself during this home inspection to stick a screwdriver through the siding of the house. So I had to like tell the seller we didn't buy the house. So it was like, you know, I'm sure he thought I'm going to own this house anyway, but then he backed out. And now I'm stuck with a jerk that put a screwdriver hole in the siding. So it happened just that fast. I didn't even know he had a screwdriver with him. So just saying, you can't always control it, but at least you're there to monitor it. And then it's not a place where we argue with the inspector either. They're being there to stay in your lane. The inspector's there to do his job. We don't want to say, oh yeah, that's nothing. Or, oh yeah, people can fix that for just a couple $100. Like, be very careful. Be very careful.
Hey, Martha, this is still an accident.
Any questions or comments on home?
Yeah.
Here in Las Vegas, and I always tell the buyers is the home inspectors will write it to today's code, so you'll have a lot of electrical. They'll be picky on outlets and junction boxes, but usually if you tell them up front, you know, anything they bring up is just a change in code. It doesn't mean there's any fire damage or potential.
Yeah. Yeah. People.
You kind of let them know. They're like, okay, he spoke about this, and it is just an outlet, and we can replace the outlet.
Yeah, this is where it's really good to know your inspectors that are coming, because I can tell you, like, home inspectors, this is what I always used to say to my buyer, home inspectors are really here to determine fire, safety risks, hazards, and damage to the house. And this particular home inspector that we have today, he's in love with the GFI outlet. And so he's going to probably ding every GFI possible place. We're supposed to have a ground fault interrupter in the kitchen and in the bathrooms, and he's going to talk about that. And these are common. They fail frequently because people have, exposed them and push the button one too many times. I have an electrician that can usually repair those for, less than $50 a piece. So we probably will hear that today, but no need to panic, right? Kelly, that's kind of what you're talking about, right? You want to let them know, like, especially if you start to know, I had a few inspectors, I know their pet peeves, right? Stop petting my peeves. They definitely have their certain things that they always find in the house. So excellent point. I think you could have a double-edged sword in having been a contractor, right? So
I don't over disclose. I just say they may mention these items.
Yeah.
Like when I look at some of the homes here are really simple because there's no humidity and there's no bugs, but it's the shingles may be peeling or the peeling of the roof. We look in the roof. I say, look on the roof and see if you see any stains from condensation with the HVAC. So I just more point it out. I don't offer them an opinion. So I'm just not trying to convince them of anything. Just, we're going to be looking out for these items, and this is what he may bring up.
Right.
Two home inspectors I use. I said, this is what they may point out, and this is what we're looking for, and this is the issue.
Yeah. Perfect.
So if it's an older home, it's a group here that they run the plumbing all the way to the street because the soil shifts here. But I just make them aware of that, then they can discuss that with them. But that's to your exact point. It's I don't know that. I'm not pretending to know that business. I'm just pointing out.
It's important. We only wear one hat in the transaction, or it can become complicated. Excellent. All right, so that's just another place. Home inspection is another place where we may have to go into all 5 of our levels of negotiation just to get through one GFI outlet, right? So now we move into this place where we are the calm and knowledgeable guide throughout the transaction. So one of the things that we should never do is assume, and we know that's a great rule in life in general, but there are many points throughout the transaction where we've got to keep checking in. So did the buyer get all of the documentation needed to the mortgage lender. I can understand how a man forgets that they have some children they're paying child support on. Not sure how a woman does that, but sometimes people don't want to come up with divorce agreements and those kind of things. Maybe it's because it's related to shame or whatever, but they're reluctant to provide what the lender needs. And let's see what I got here. Yes, I love finding out that the statement came from you. I caught it from my mentor, but it was actually you. Calm and knowledgeable guide. Exactly. So, thank you, Kristen. We want to be careful about the appraisal. Make sure the appraisal was ordered. Oh my goodness, I had the perfect storm come together. Brand new agent, brand new mortgage lender. I'm the broker, and the lender thought that the buyer had moved on and got a different lender. The agent didn't confirm with the buyer what lender they were using, and the buyer, first-time home buyer, that was the trifecta of mistakes. First-time home buyer didn't know they needed to do anything else other than get that pre-approval from the lender. They were completely clueless. We were 10 days from closing. That's why I'm going to share my 10-7-3-2-1 method, but 10 days away from closing, and I discovered they hadn't even applied for their mortgage. So we were able to work with a lender, though, that closes in 8 days, and we still closed on time. But man, it was a VA loan, so it was a little tight. But you have to keep communicating, and it was only because the agent, who was brand new, came in and said, "Hey, I have a closing in 10 days." I'm like, "Great. Did you do this? Did you do that?" Like, no, I didn't do any of that. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we were able to save the deal. But if they would have just kept waiting if we hadn't had that conversation. So check on those appraisals, check on those inspections, make sure the appraisal was ordered. Sometimes the buyer doesn't pay their application fee to the lender. Like I said, first-time home buyers aren't sure how the process works. So make sure you're checking in. Did they pay their application fee to the lender? Was the inspection ordered? Was the survey ordered? This is another thing. The title companies in Florida anyway, surveys are not required for a lot of lenders. So it's really up to the buyer. But if the buyer wants to put up a fence or something, they need a survey. You don't want them to have to pay an extra rush fee if you don't find that out until the day before closing. So definitely at least 10 days prior to the closing, make sure the survey, if it's required or requested, has been ordered. And then again, make sure your buyer is staying up with they can't ignore their lender. I mean, we live in a world where people ghost people, right? You can't ignore your lender. If your lender is telling you, "I need your W-2s," they're not going to say, "Oh, forget it. I really don't need those. Let's close tomorrow." They have to provide the information that the lender's requesting, and they can't just switch lenders at the last minute. Well, they could, but they might not close on time and could risk losing the house. Remember, we want to set the expectations and explain the consequences. So now closing, this is where the 10-7-3-2-1 method comes in. So before closing, we want to make sure everyone is doing their part, and like I said, there's potentially over 30 people involved in a real estate transaction, and you are the conductor with that train that has 30 cars on it. So how are you going to keep it going into the station, toot toot, right on time? Or are you going to be coming in as a runaway train that might just go off the tracks at the last minute? So how are we going to do that? Like I said, I love the 10-7-3-2-1 method. What that is, 10 days prior to closing, I'm going to call everybody involved in this closing and say, "Hey, I hear we're closing on August 1st. Is everybody happy about that?" I'm thrilled. It's a great thing. "Oh, we are? I didn't know. I thought we were still waiting on something," or "We're not going to close on August 1st if your buyer doesn't get me his divorce agreement." Like, you're going to find out something at this point. Well, this is why you call 10 days prior, because everything can be fixed and still close on time in 10 days. If something came up, if everybody said, oh, we're good, everybody, I'm perfect, you can skip day 7. But if someone said, oh no, I didn't get this paperwork from your buyer, then on day 7, you're going to circle back and confirm with the buyer, hey, remember you were going to get that divorce paper to the lender? Did you do that, right? So we're now 7 days prior to closing. Everybody hopefully now is okay. There still could be something outstanding, like maybe the survey. So you're going to call 3 days prior to closing, and you're going to call everybody involved again, and you're going to say, are you set? Are you set? Are the sellers do the sellers have their moving van there? Because again, you can't trust necessarily that the other side isn't a new agent and doesn't realize he's supposed to be checking in with the seller to make sure they've turned off the utilities. Because if the seller did not notify they're turning off the utilities, there's no way your buyer can turn on the utilities. So especially on that day 3, check in on those utilities. And again, go to the buyer and seller checklist class that walks you through all that stuff. But we really need to make sure that our buyer isn't going to be stuck without air conditioning over the weekend, or, not moved into their house when they have everything on a moving van. So that 10, 7, 3, 2, 1. By the time you get to the second day, you should be confirming the time and place of the closing. And on that last day, you want to call everybody and say, I'm going to be there. I'm doing the walkthrough at X and X time. We really definitely want to over communicate toward the end. And that really helps things go smoothly. And it's our chance to be a hero. And there's nothing better than a hero story to inspire referrals. So always focus on generating listings. Even if you've been working with a buyer this whole time, there's plenty of places within this where you could garner a listing for your team. Maybe they have a house to sell. Maybe a friend of theirs is selling. Always have your antenna up for potential listings, even when you're working with a buyer. Remember that reverse funnel technique. That reverse funnel technique can oftentimes reveal a place where you might have an opportunity for a listing. Because they'll say, oh, I'll be standing in my new house in January with my keys in my hand after I get my vacation home sold in North Carolina and my current house, because I want to combine the income from those 2 houses to buy my new house. Wow, that was a lot of information that really is going to get me a referral. It's going to get me a listing. So make sure we're using communication styles that reveal all the potential transactions that could be involved with just one buyer. Use your pre-listing presentation materials like 9 critical questions. Even if you're a buyer's agent on a team, at least have one of these magazines in your trunk in case you come across one of those listing opportunities. And then review the active marketing plan and your team's added value if you're trusted to do listing presentations for the team as well. So you want to be really up to speed with all of the special things that your Teams Plus team can add. And always check with your broker. Remember, the broker is king on any of these processes. I've sold real estate in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, and Florida. I have a pretty good handle on some of the processes in other states like North Carolina and Georgia, but I don't know all 50 for sure. So lean on your broker for that information. All right, I'm just going to stop here and just take some feedback on the buyer process before we jump into launch your business. So what has shifted for you? Was there any discovery? I know we have some good experience on the call. Welcome anyone's comment or what they'd like to add.
I really like the reverse funnel aspect again. That was good.
Good. Awesome. Anybody else? All right, so we're going to talk about your business. So we've talked about, how to talk with buyers, how to really move them through the funnel, move them through the process. We've gone through a whole buyer transaction with all of the places that negotiation can show up for you. So now let's talk about your business, because you've joined a team, but you're still a team within, you're still an entrepreneur within a team. So I like to call them intrapreneurs. You're not an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur. So what does an intrapreneur do? Well, you still have to have a plan with your team leader. You really have to understand how your money works, what's the split within the team, what will you be taking home as your net, and what do you need to pay your monthly bills? Because you could be the best team member ever and have the best team leader ever, but if you're not meeting your monthly budget, you're probably not going to be able to stay within the team and the structure. So create a plan with your team leader. How many transactions do you have to do in order to meet your budget? And then time block your schedule. Make sure that you're allowing time, because a lot of times people will join teams. Maybe they're dual career agents and they're joining a team because they're looking for some support. Maybe they're a teacher or a fireman. Those are our famous nurses oftentimes. Also, my favorite agents are always nurses and teachers. They tend to have the best success rate, even more so than salespeople coming into this business. Also, food servers tend to have really good success in this business because they know how to serve people. And so where on your schedule is there time to actually achieve your goals? And then we want to talk about determining our why. Why is that important? What is a why? We want to talk a little bit about that. And then to plan for the unexpected. So one of the listing power rules is to know your numbers. And this is really hard for people because many people do not math. And we still have to math. I can do 6% of anything, but I'm not really a great mathematician. Know your budget and your business plan. So do you have an established personal budget? If you don't, you want to take a look at that, even with a simple spreadsheet. How much is your mortgage? How much is your car payment? How much do you eat? Can you cut back on, on going to Starbucks? What can you do to adjust your budget to your new unpredictable income? And then have you allowed for business expenses? Because sometimes people will get in real estate and they're like, oh, this is the budget I need, but they're not aware that it's going to cost you about $2,000 a year in additional fees. Also, you may have to pay more for your car insurance. There's other things that happen that increase your expenses. And if you're not keeping up with what you used to make as a secretary and you're adding these additional expenses, again, that's why we see such an attrition rate in real estate. So have you translated that desired income into the number of transactions you need? And how many transactions do you need per year? And then how many do you need per month? Because a lot of areas in the country, real estate is cyclical. I don't know about Las Vegas, but here in Florida, it's kind of hot and rainy in the summer. And so it slows down a little bit, especially in August when kids are getting back to school and that kind of thing. And you can actually track it in our year-over-year numbers. The lowest amount a house will close for in our Hillsborough County is in October every year. You could go back to even in the runaway train days when houses were selling for a lot of money. The best deals were had in October, which means they were written in August. And so, there is cycles, and sometimes we need to build that into our plan. So this is what I call ACLAC, and that's how you remember it. It's not like Aflac, the duck, but it's ACLAC, ACLAC. And this is how you come up with your conversion ratio. And this, once you've been in real estate for about a year, if you do this every day, and I use just one of these free desk calendars that I get from Hillsborough Title, and you just write this down the side of the day, ACLAC. So how many attempts did I make today? Did I go out and go door knocking? Did I make some calls through my sphere of influence? Did I do some social media two-way messaging contacts? Did I go through my follow-up day and attempted to call people? What did you do? How many attempts did you make? So for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to say that I made 40 attempts today. I went out and I door knocked, and I knocked on 40 doors. Of those 40 doors, 20 people actually answered, so they became a contact. An attempt, and I've just left a door hanger, that is not going to do anything. You have to have a conversation. So I made 40 attempts. I contacted 20 people. From those 20 people, 20 of those conversations led to 5 people actually giving me a lead. So in those conversations, I asked if they know of anyone else in the neighborhood that may be interested in selling, or do they have any friends or family members who have always wanted to move in here. See, remember, when we talked earlier about making a plan for your conversations and how you guys did your value proposition, well, if I'm going to go out and go door knocking, don't just knock on the door and when they answer, like, oh, I'm shocked. I was just here to leave a door hanger. I have no idea what the hell to say to you. Like, don't be caught unaware, right? So have this conversation with yourself. What is it going to look like? What am I going to talk about when I meet with them? So obviously, if I had 20 contacts and I had a rich, robust conversation about, do you know of anyone that might come to our open house? If you do, I'd love to call them and personally invite them. That would be someone that could be a lead, right? So make sure you're planning those conversations for your door knocking. And now I got 5 leads. So I knocked on 40 doors. I talked to 20 people. I got 5 leads. So I'm going to call all 5 of those leads, hopefully with a very skilled conversation, pre-prepared. And from those, I got 2 appointments. And from those 2 appointments, I got 1 contract. One of the people decided to sign a BBA with me. And so my conversion ratio is 40-1. And why this is important is after you're in the business 3 or 4 years, you should be able to know, if I want to secure a contract today, I can door knock 40 door knocks. I can cold call 100 people, which it might take to cold call, right? You'll start to learn where you have better ratio. And the best ratio is usually within your follow-up or your cold leads that you're warming up. And sometimes they can convert in as much as 10-1. So just knowing your conversion ratio, especially if you're working with an established lead pool, you can get that pretty good. And so you just know, look, I have to make 10 calls today to get to the deal I need to pay my mortgage this month. See, a lot of times the problem with real estate is the payoff is so high. We get such a nice big check that we stop thinking we have to get a check every month, because we could actually live on one every other month. But let's be real. 1 transaction a month is a minimum goal. And if you're not at least doing that, are you really in business? Because you're kind of just waiting for it to fall on you. Because with any kind of decent activity, even 4 or 5 days a week, you should be able to get to at least 2 transactions a month. If you're only having less than 1 transaction a month, you're probably not being very proactive. And that's what I find, like agents. Any agent that I get in coaching, I require them to do their ACLAC. And of course, when we review it in coaching, he's like, yeah, I know why I didn't have any transactions last month, because I don't have any attempts in the last 3 weeks. Or, it's usually by the time they're waiting for the money to come in, and they need the money, now they're very active making the attempts. But if you go back 90 days in your calendar, what were you doing 90 days ago? That's what's going to tell me what's showing up today. And so make sure you're keeping at least attempts. I would say you need a minimum of 20 attempts a day of some sort. Any questions or comments or understanding the value of establishing your conversion ratio? All right, so maximize your time. Establish what time off you want per year, per month, per week. Do you want 2 days a week off? Is one day a week off enough for you? Always start with what you need for you. take care of yourself and your family first and build in the rest around it. But this is one of the issues. Agents are like, oh no, I'll work 365. I'm ambitious. I'll work 24/7. But what they do is they burn out very quickly. So what do you want as your time off, and block that first so that you get a real idea of, hey, I don't have 365 days to achieve my goal. If I'm taking 2 days off a week, 2 days off a week and 4 weeks on a vacation a year, plus I'm going to some education things, I have usually less than 250 days left. I've pretty much taken a third of my year away just by taking the time I need for myself. And that's okay, but it motivates me to work a lot harder on those 240 days I have left. And then establish a block of time every day to seek new business. And, if you get busy as a buyer's agent and you're showing property a lot, then, it may be as little as an hour a day, but do you have at least something blocked off to follow up with the leads that you have, to really massage those people in your pipeline? Otherwise, you're just going to lose them, and you've spent a lot of money getting a lead that you're going to lose because you haven't spent any time following up with it and massaging it and nurturing it. Then establish time to improve your skills. So I appreciate all of you taking the entire day today to spend with us in boot camp. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two that you can take away, because we always need to keep improving and building our skill. And then we want to achieve our goals by honoring our time blocks. So it's one thing to block the time, but then actually honoring it and doing what you said you were going to do is what will make all the difference. So if you haven't already, I highly encourage you to watch Simon Sinek's Golden Circle video. You can find it on YouTube. He goes into a great description of why matters so much, not only for us personally to drive our business, but also why it matters for your business. So the reason that you are doing real estate, we talked about our value proposition, really being able to articulate your why is important as well. Because it's something that will either make or break your business. So how do you determine your why? What problems are you passionate about solving? For me, I was a single mom at one time, and so I worked with what I called the SWORDs, the separated, widowed, or recently divorced singles, and I was passionate about them owning a home. You have to remember, a woman couldn't even have a checkbook until the 1970s. And as a matter of fact, when I got divorced and I was searching for a new car, I had a leased vehicle and I was looking to lease a new vehicle. And the vehicle that I was currently driving, I had with my ex-husband. I went into the Nissan dealership and he took me on a very minuscule test drive. And I was there with my 2 kids and ready to purchase this same car that I had always had, and to lease it. I couldn't even afford to buy it, but and he said to me, I just need you to get a note from your ex-husband so that you can buy this car. And I kind of said a swear word and said, I don't need a note. I have a blank court order, right? So I walked out of there, and of course, will never own a Nissan for the rest of my life. But I'm very passionate about helping women purchase their first home, especially after divorce, because sometimes they become afraid of that. They make as much money, they're just as stable as any man will ever be, and yet they hesitate, they wait for the knight in shining armor to purchase a house. So this is just, I was passionate. I am passionate about it. It developed into a whole niche business for me, where I ended up selling a lot of villas and townhomes and gated communities, and had a whole female home inspectors, female, I don't know, I just did a whole thing about that. But again, not that's for everybody, but that was something I was passionate about doing. And then, who do you want to help or serve with your problem, solve this problem that you're solving? What personal experiences will drive your values or drive your passion? And then what legacy do you want to leave? Maybe it's, now I have 6 grown children. They all own homes. I'm really proud of that. And one of them lives in New York City, and he's 50 years old, and he just bought his first house because it takes that long when you live in New York. But I know that owning a home is the best way to build generational wealth. And I want that not only for the women that I serve, but even, for my children as they were growing up. I want them to own a home. So I'm very passionate about first-time home buyers as well. I want people to say, I never would have bought a home if it wasn't for Lisa Spencer. And I've built this wealth because of her partnership with me. And then how will this business bring meaning to my life? I still have clients. My daughter has a team. She just sold the 5th house to a person that I sold a house to 20 years ago. So it's a legacy that you can leave and grow. And I have lunch with that person probably once every other month. And I met her through real estate. I sold her home years and years ago. So that's what I love about this business. You really do develop a whole culture of people around you. So what is your why? And I know it seems like, why should I spend time on my why? Well, this is why, because you're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to hit times in your career where it's just hard. And it is one of those moments where you're going to see this roadblock and say, you know what, maybe I should just go back to waiting tables. But you know what, don't do that. If you have a big enough why, you'll figure out how to break through, go up, over, around, whatever you have to do to get through that roadblock and keep going on with your journey, because it matters and you have a huge why that's going to pull you through. And those of you who are aligned with teams, I think have a special advantage, because if you're not feeling that passion from them, then, sometimes when you're out on your own at LPT, we're a cloud brokerage, so you're kind of on your own, right? Unless you're affiliated with a team. Of course, I'd like to think I help provide that through our refresh sessions and some of the things we do in our Agent Essentials Circle to make that connection and community that we all need. But you have a huge advantage being on a team, because you have that passionate team leader that's bringing it every day and helping you with your why to fuel their why. So what action items do we need to take from today's session? The first is you need to review your numbers with your team leader. If you haven't done it already, sit down with them, calculate how many transactions a month you need to get to in order to get to the income you desire, because each team has their own compensation structure. Remember, one of our core values at LPT is agent choice and your own individual definition of success, and teams have their own compensation models within the LPT model. So make sure you're reviewing that with them. Then finish putting at least 50 people into the team database. Either use that QR code that we shared to put it on a spreadsheet. If you don't have access to the team CRM yet, put it in that spreadsheet so it can be easily uploaded. But get at least 50 people in there this week. And then complete a dress rehearsal with at least 10 people. So we've talked about our value proposition. We've talked about the buyer consultation. Get in there, use your tools, use your resources that you have on the team to really develop your presentation, because one of our listing power rules is to always give a presentation. So have you done that? Are you skilled at it? Practice with your dog, practice with your spouse, practice with anyone who listen. And then I'm going to suggest that you practice with people outside of your home, because they could give you referrals if you do such a great job. Take the pressure off them. Look, I'm not looking to buy or sell a home with you. I just really need to practice. I'm with a new company. They have a lot of tools I'm not familiar with, and I don't want to fumble over them with someone that's a customer. So I know you're just my Aunt Sally. Can I meet with you and just show you all of the things that I have to review with my buyers and sellers? And guess what? She's going to go to her bunko night this week and say, oh, my cute little niece, Lisa, because she still remembers me as the kid who spilled milk at the Thanksgiving table. She came over And she did this really nifty presentation with a power box or something like that. And it really is a lot of tools that I never had with my realtor. And you said you want to sell your house, you got to call her. She'll do a great job. I'm sure she doesn't spill milk anymore, right? So, and then establish your weekly schedule. It's really important to work from a plan. When you don't work from a plan, you really just are stabbing in the dark. You're bowling through a curtain. You're just throwing that ball and hoping you knock a pin down. Whereas if you have a schedule, you can see what's in front of you and you can see, do I need to move to the left? Do I need to move to the right? And always remember to include Motivational Monday on your schedule every Monday at 11.